Part 9. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 85. Chapter 83, Recovering One's Own Property. Google search Furtkin. After saying goodbye to Captain Sheffield, Luo Guang took a small box given to him by Markin and returned to the hotel room. The plan to join the X organization this time was really full of twists and turns. Although he was not physically tired, Luo Guang felt mentally exhausted. But the result was good after all, so Luo Guang cheered up and sat on the bed to open the blind box. By the way, because Captain Sheffield told him that he could refer to the X organization both inside and outside in the future, Luo Guang still habitually called the family organization the X organization. There were not many things in the box Markin gave him. First of all, it was an X organization identity card, but the appearance was disguised as a bank card, with account number, bank name, etc. on the card. In fact, the family organization did not have an identity card with the organization name family written on it. Instead, they all used fake bank cards with an X background pattern as identity verification cards for family organization members, which was also a measure taken by the family organization to cover up its real organization name. However, according to Captain Sheffield, the family emblems of the nobles at the top of the organization have a certain identity recognition function, so Luo Guang was asked to find time to memorize the styles and meanings of those emblems in order to avoid accidentally bumping into the round table members of the family. After putting away this important ID card, Luo Guang took out a machine from the box. In addition to these two things, there was only the charging cable of the machine and an A4 paper in the box. The machine was just the size of a touch-screen smartphone, with only a screen and a few buttons, and no camera. It looked like a smartphone that Luo Guang used before he traveled through time. Smartphone, Luo Guang was surprised to see this thing in this era. Thinking of this, Luo Guang pressed the power button to turn on the power. After clicking on the panel a few times, he realized that this was a pad machine, similar to a tablet computer, and to use this machine, you need the account on your ID card and your fingerprint to unlock it. After unlocking, Luo Guang set a password for himself to strengthen confidentiality. The program system used in the machine in his hand was something Luo Guang had never seen before. It was probably an internal system developed by the family organization. It didn't have many functions. It was basically used by the members of the family organization to query information, accept tasks, etc. After getting the machine, Luo Guang didn't care about the other things in the box and immediately looked for his information in the organization. Well, it seems that the information on the Apocalypse organization was very clear. Luo Guang found that his experience in the organization's information database was very different from what the Apocalypse said. Mainly in the database of the X organization, when he lived in an orphanage, he was taken away by Umbrella Company for training before he came of age, and then he had been working for Umbrella Company. The information in the database was different from the experience told by the Apocalypse, and the information on the Apocalypse was only a few sentences in the database, and there was no useful information. However, Luo Guang didn't plan to care who was true or false for the time being. He continued to look through his own information and finally found the information he wanted: the property obtained by the Apocalypse Luo Guang before he crossed over. Of course, the most important thing was the bank card opened by the Apocalypse Luo Guang, which Luo Guang also found, and there was still a lot of money in the account. While looking at the screen, Luo Guang was grinning. After all, seeing so much money, Luo Guang, as a former office worker, was naturally very happy. The bank password was not shown in the intelligence. It was not known whether it was not found or hidden. However, Luo Guang only needed to apply for a new bank card and change the password to use it. His savings were enough for him and Jill to live a worry-free life. Luo Guang looked at the nearly 3 million yuan on the screen and had a thought of retiring directly. Haha, Luo Guang laughed dryly in the room. It seemed that he was really a little mentally exhausted. Thinking of this, Luo Guang lay on the bed and checked with the pad machine. Thinking of the red claws mentioned by Captain Sheffield today, Luo Guang operated the pad machine to check the data of the red claws. It was almost the same as what Captain Sheffield said, but Luo Guang found that the red claws had already had an experience of encountering a biochemical crisis. When the blood plague virus first broke out in Danforth, the private security army of Weston United Construction Company, the predecessor of Red Claw, was stationed in the company warehouse in the suburbs of the city. In order to survive, the private security army immediately responded, established a defense line, and prevented the further spread of the blood plague virus before the military arrived. The private security army was responsible for blocking a section of the tunnel connecting Danforth and Trumbull. However, when the military took over, the security team had suffered heavy losses, with less than 4 people left alive, and these people, together with Luo Guang and the new recruits from the USS, became the basic personnel of Red Claw. Next, Luo Guang used the database of Organization X to confirm the situation on the Umbrella side. The latest intelligence is that Lotford Island was attacked by the enemy. Umbrella has already known about it, but it seems that the investigation results have not yet come out, so Organization X has not obtained any other information. Luo Guang also checked his benefits in Organization X and the bases of Organization X in various places, such as where to buy weapons and where to entrust intelligence collection. In terms of the organization's authority, Luo Guang is a C level, which is slightly better than D level. Basically, some of the organization's resources can be used freely and for free, and he can also accept some tasks issued by the round table members of the family. He took a look at the tasks posted. There are not many of them. They are all small pleasures for the rich, but there is a task to find the elixir of life. Luo Guang has some ideas about this. After reading the information he needed on the pad machine, Luo Guang reorganized his belongings. First, he had the Beretta M92F pistol, Umbrella custom version, and the spare G19 pistol that had been with him since he crossed over, and the matching magazines and 9mm bullets. Maybe it's not worth it, but when Luo Guang used the blood samples and machine parts of the HCF organization's hunters in exchange for the special plane of the X organization, he also had the idea of being able to carry a pistol on the plane. Maybe Luo Guang can apply for cargo transportation, but Luo Guang always feels insecure without a gun. In a way, Luo Guang, who crossed over to the lighthouse country, quickly integrated into the local culture in terms of guns. The only other weapon he had was the telescopic dagger. He had used it many times, but the blade had not become blunt or rolled, so Luo Guang had no plans to change it to other close-range weapons for the time being. He also had the ability to harden his armor and could directly manufacture blades, daggers, and other weapons. In the safety compartment of the backpack, there was also the T Veronica virus that he had modified, the memory of the digital camera, and some paper materials that had not been handed over to Umbrella or Organization X. In addition, the backpack only contained his usual high-energy food, bottled water, a small roll of rope, a roll of tape and a small medicine box. As for clothes and shoes, Luo Guang temporarily put them in a suitcase he bought when he bought clothes to change. Luo Guang carried his backpack and the belt with the gun with him, because the backpack was waterproof, and he even put it in a place where he could easily take it when he took a shower. After sorting out and taking a hot bath, Luo Guang lay on the bed, thinking about the next action. On the Red Claw side, the anti-biochemical combatants trained by Umbrella for Organization X had not returned to the team, so the action had not yet been officially launched. However, when thinking about this, Luo Guang remembered that those people who were planned to disappear during the mission were acting with Hank, the god of death, and he had an inexplicable premonition that those people might die directly during the mission. Considering this possibility, the anti-biochemical instructors of the Red Claw Combat Force originally planned might not be enough, but that was also something that the Red Claw commander had to worry about. In the following period of time, Luo Guang had free time again, and it was time to deal with the affairs of the umbrella company, so Luo Guang planned to go directly to the Chicago Research Institute branch. Luo Guang disappeared while executing the European branch, but he went directly back to the American branch to report the situation, which might make the people in the European branch feel unhappy, but it didn't matter. He joined the X organization, so even if something happened, he had a way out on his side. In addition, Wesker, who was weaker than him, was not afraid of the umbrella company. Luo Guang, who felt that he was stronger than Wesker, was even less worried about not being able to escape when the relationship turned against each other. Although the plot was very different from the Resident Evil game he had played before crossing because of his appearance, the direction of the world development in the game could still be referenced with the database of the X organization. At this time, the Raccoon City incident was still in the process of fermentation, and the public reaction was the most direct and rapid. However, the Global Pharmaceutical Federation, which is composed of many large pharmaceutical companies around the world, seemed very quiet at this time. The stock price of Umbrella Corporation has declined, but it seems that the downward trend has weakened in recent times. The main reason is that the sales of the 3 healthcare products that Umbrella Corporation focuses on are still strong. These 3 products are aspirin-based drugs for treating various common diseases, an ointment suitable for open wounds, and a skin beauty product that can make users look younger. Lying on the bed, thinking about various things, Luo Guang slowly fell into sleep without knowing it. Early the next morning, Luo Guang came to the Chicago Branch Research Institute. The process of entering the institute was smooth. His ID card could be used, and no security personnel rushed out to pounce on Luo Guang, so Luo Guang found Minister Luke's secretary smoothly all the way. Because he wanted to make a surprise attack, Luo Guang did not make an appointment with Minister Luke, and went to find Minister Luke's secretary to try to confirm the situation from the secretary's expression. The secretary was a little surprised to see Luo Guang suddenly appear, and asked, "Intelligence officer, didn't you go to Europe?" After all, the secretary had handled Luo Guang's visit to the European branch, so it was not surprising that the other party knew that he had gone to Europe. "Something happened and I came back. Is Minister Luke here?" Luo Guang asked. The secretary nodded and said, "The minister is here. I'll tell the minister, and you can go directly to the minister." "Thank you, I'll treat you to dinner when I have time in the future." Luo Guang blew a kiss to the secretary, as if he didn't know that the other party was a surveillance officer. "Okay." The secretary shook his chest and replied with a smile. Luo Guang left the secretary's office and then went to Minister Luke's office. The reason why he didn't find Minister Guslin but Minister Luke was because Minister Luke was not someone who could hide his thoughts. He only needed to go there to confirm the latest news, so he didn't need to trouble Minister Guslin. However, judging from the reactions of the people he met along the way, his betrayal of the company should not have been discovered. "Hello, Luke." After Luo Guang knocked on the door and entered, he greeted Minister Luke, who had serious dark circles under his eyes. Seeing Luo Guang come in, Minister Luke yawned, stopped what he was doing, and said, "Ah, Luo Guangqi is back so soon. Weren't you sent to a small island to stay for a while?" "The island was attacked, so I came back." Luo Guang found a chair without documents and sat on it. "Who attacked?" "I don't know." Luo Guang did not tell Luke the information that the enemy had launched a controllable hunter-slayer too. "What an eventful time it has been." Minister Luke could only sigh with emotion. Then he glanced at the clock on the table and said in surprise, "It turns out it's already so late." Minister Luke took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes and then said, "I have been working for 18 hours straight, and I should take a rest." So busy with work now, Luo Guang took advantage of the other party's confusion and planned to learn about the research and development of the blood plague virus after the biochemical weapons department obtained it. Minister Luke sighed, took out a folded camp bed from the side, and said, "Oh, it's still about the blood plague virus. Didn't I say before that we started to fuse the T-virus and the blood plague virus to produce new biochemical weapons? Failed. Yes, the two cannot coexist in the body of the experimental subject. Later, Guslan and I tried to splice them together through technical means, or to let a large number of T-viruses engulf the blood plague virus to allow the T-virus to mutate on its own, but all failed. After speaking, Minister Luke pointed to the documents on the table, so I have been studying the previous reports since yesterday, analyzing and finding out the reasons. Did the blood plague virus destroy itself? Or did the characteristics of the blood plague virus not show up after forced splicing or fusion? Luo Guang had read some virology books before, so he could pick up the topic of virology a little more than before. Minister Luke replied, for the former, the genetic structure of those blood plague viruses is too stable and will collapse as long as there is a slight change, and our technology cannot seamlessly replace gene segments. So it seems we don't know how long it will take to break through this difficulty. After hearing Minister Luke's words, Luo Guang clearly understood how superb the system's operation was. Minister Luke put a pillow and quilt on the camp bed and said, yes, the superiors have given us a deadline. If it still doesn't work, we will first develop controllable biochemical weapons made only with T-virus or blood plague virus. It is said that the company is going to the black market and is preparing to start selling biological and chemical weapons to those in war areas. But hasn't the company's stock price stabilized recently? And isn't it afraid that someone will find out that the company is behind the seller? So it's just preparation. If the Raccoon City incident cannot be concealed about biohazards and biochemical weapons, then we will start planning to turn the Raccoon City incident into a propaganda GG for our biochemical weapons. Minister Luke's information was from a high-level meeting. I heard it when Luo Guang lowered his head and thought, and said, it seems that the company can still persist. In a while, I'm going to rest. But Minister Luke wasn't too optimistic about it, yawned, and started to catch up with the guests. Okay, you should have a good rest since the other party said that. Luo Guang said nothing more. After all, the other party is in the position of a minister. It is not his responsibility to know whether the other party has a way out or to recruit him. After looking for Minister Luke, Luo Guang went to see Minister Guslan, but he didn't plan to talk too much about serious matters. He mainly wanted to show his face to let the other party know that he was back. However, Luo Guang was rejected. Minister Guslan and his secretary were not here. Thinking that they might leave temporarily, Luo Guang was stopped when he was about to walk to the research area of the virus department. Asterisk. Don't want to go to work. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 86. Chapter 84 Review. Hello, Agent Luo. The director of the branch is looking for you. Please come with us. The two people who came over had no abnormal expressions on their faces, their hands were vertical normally, and they did not show any alert movements. Luo Guang nodded, thinking that they should not know what the director of the branch wanted to see him for, so he did not ask, and directly said, lead the way. The other party did not react in particular, and walked in front of Luo Guang on the left and right to lead the way, which made Luo Guang confirm that it was not his betrayal of the company that was exposed. It's no wonder that Luo Guang was afraid. When he just looked for Minister Guslan, the other party was not there, which made Luo Guang wonder if Minister Guslan was arrested and then gave himself up. Not long after, Luo Guang came to a small meeting room in the institute, where there were not many people. A middle-aged man in a suit sat in front of the door. Luo Guang saw the serious expression of the other party as soon as he entered. In addition, there were two bodyguard-like characters nearly 2 meters tall behind the middle-aged man, both with poker faces, holding pistols in their hands, and maintaining the highest level of alert. Luo Guang sat in the chair facing the other person and looked at him. The two people who brought him here reported that they had brought the person here, then retreated and stood guard at the door. The branch director was observing Luo Guang and did not speak immediately. Luo Guang took advantage of this gap to observe the two bodyguards. The two bodyguards in front of him were using the P229 pistol developed by SIG. This pistol has three calibers, namely 9mm pistol bullet, 0.375 SIG pistol bullet and 0.40-inch S/U0026W pistol bullet. However, because the muzzle was not facing Luo Guang could not judge. In addition to the pistol, Luo Guang also saw a large bulge in the bodyguard's suit. Judging from the size, it might be a submachine gun such as Uzi. "Hello, Intelligence Officer Luo." The other party did not introduce himself, but Luo Guang had checked the intelligence of the Chicago branch, so he knew the other party's identity and said, "Hello, Minister Saul." Minister Saul Charon, the current minister of the Chicago branch, was born in the Lighthouse country. He studied in Europe in his early years and later directly joined the Paris branch of the European branch of Umbrella Corporation. Later, Minister Saul was transferred to the American branch when the company expanded the American market. After working for a year, he was assigned to the Chicago branch and has been working in this position ever since. Luo Guang thought of the other party's resume, so it was not surprising that Minister Saul had his own connections in Europe. Thinking of recent events, Luo Guang speculated that this time he might be looking for him about the loss of the parasite Nemesis Alpha, or what happened on Lotford Island. Minister Saul observed Luo Guang's reaction again and asked, "Do you know why I asked you to come here?" Luo Guang shook his head and said, "I just came back not long ago. Today is my first day back to the Branch Research Institute." Minister Saul nodded and said, "We investigated the plane that brought you back. It seems that the departure point is the South Africa. Umbrella Company investigated the background of the operating company of the plane carrying Luo Guang and found no problems. They just wondered why Luo Guang appeared in the South Africa. Yes, Luo Guang's plane stopped once for refueling." After hearing what Minister Saul said, he didn't say much. In this case, it is better to answer what others ask. There is no need to say more, so as not to say more mistakes. "Why are you in the South Africa? That place is not close to Lotford Island." Minister Saul's authority allows him to know the existence of Lotford Island. Luo Guang replied calmly, "Lotford Island was attacked. Continuous large-scale airstrikes led to the discovery of virus leakage on the island, resulting in a biochemical crisis." Luo Guang's words were consistent with the results of Umbrella's investigation on the island, and also showed that Luo Guang was present when the attack began, so Minister Saul continued to ask, "We found a survivor on the island, named Rodrigo, who is the island's security captain. It was him who opened the prison door according to the report he submitted, and it was you who untied the prisoner Claire Redfield's shackles." Hearing Minister Saul's words, Luo Guang was speechless about Rodrigo. He was also involved in letting Claire go, so why did he say such a thing? Luo Guang didn't know that Umbrella had the handle of the indigenous relics on the island that Rodrigo cherished, so Rodrigo didn't dare to lie at all. Before Rodrigo rescued Claire, he thought he was doomed, but he didn't expect that he miraculously survived. After Rodrigo killed a zombie guard that wandered into the underground prison, he found the hemostatic drug on the zombie and successfully stopped the bleeding wound on his waist. Finally, in order to avoid the air raid, Rodrigo hid in the ruins of the indigenous people on the island. With the blessing of his ancestors, he survived until he was discovered by the USS troops of Umbrella. Luo Guang did not deny it, and nodded in acknowledgement, "Yes, because I need help to escape together." "But why did you look for the enemies of Umbrella?" "Because Rodrigo was injured and couldn't help at all. At that time, I couldn't find anyone from other companies." Luo Guang shrugged his shoulders and continued, "The original purpose of the captured Claire was to lure her former STARS brother into the trap we prepared, but the lure plan failed. So Claire has been booked to become an experimental material for the Lotford Island Research Institute. Other than that, she is in a daze and has no information that the company needs." so I judged that the other party is not of much value to the company, and let her go. It will not pose a threat to the company after coming out. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Minister Saul also learned about Claire's information after learning about this, and knew that what Luo Guang said was correct. Moreover, Minister Saul knew that if Luo Guang kept asking why he let Claire go, Luo Guang would probably say the wrong thing, but this is what happens to normal people. On the contrary, if Luo Guang keeps answering fluently and does not say the wrong thing, Minister Saul they also suspected that Luo Guang had premeditated and prepared his words in advance, so he stopped asking about this matter and didn't get into any more trouble. Minister Saul continued to ask, what happened then? Was the company's enemy Claire solved at the end? The other party's question made Luo Guang realize that Umbrella Company's surveillance was not simultaneously uploaded to the internet, so Umbrella Company needed to use this simple method to inquire one by one to understand what happened on the island. Later, the other party and I were separated due to the attack of biological and chemical weapons. Because I shot and wanted to kill the other party on the spot, the biological and chemical weapons focused all their attention on me. Luo Guang looked furious and added, and that's our company's hunter. That is not from our company. We found the corpses of biological and chemical weapons that do not belong to our company on the island. They are the predators you mentioned. After analysis by the European branch, they confirmed that they are the improved version of our company's predators. Originally we thought it was a new biological and chemical weapon developed by the Lotford Island Research Institute, but we found electronic cameras that did not belong to our company on those corpses. There are no data storage cards in those electronic cameras, but there are data transmitters, so Luo Guang is not worried that Umbrella will extract video data that is detrimental to him, and he also asked, is the video inside damaged? That thing doesn't have a video data storage function. It may be transmitted directly through the internet, so we have to ask the survivors on the island. Like this, Minister Saul was biased towards Luo Guang's lack of betrayal, so he provided some information. Then you fled to Africa, Minister Saul continued to ask. That's right, Luo Guang didn't say how he got to Africa, just to prevent the other party from asking about the plane. After counting the vehicles on the island, Umbrella Company also found that a few planes were missing, so they thought that Luo Guang had flown away. This was also in line with Luo Guang's character, who knew how to fly planes. Okay, I have one last question. Minister Saul opened a document in front of him and asked, why did you come back directly to the American division instead of returning to the European division? And you didn't immediately after arriving in Chicago. Come and return. Because Luo Guang paid great attention to hiding his whereabouts after being followed by Wang Wei, Minister Saul could only confirm Luo Guang's return to Chicago through the time of the plane's landing. However, the intelligence agents of the Chicago branch were not there at the time, so he did not know that Luo Guang had returned to Chicago. Where did the light go after leaving the airport? Because I'm from the Chicago branch of the Americas branch. Luo Guang's words made Minister Saul couldn't help but nod in his heart. As for why I didn't come back immediately, it's because I was followed not long after I got off the plane. Luo Guang directly blurred his specific whereabouts, and instead attracted the other person's attention to other aspects. Who? Minister Saul thought of the loss of the parasite Nemesis Alpha sent by the European branch. The incident of the loss of the parasite Nemesis Alpha is still under investigation, but everyone who knows the transport route of the Alpha parasite has been tested, and no one has any doubts. Luo Guang's words made Minister Saul, who had been in charge of the Chicago branch's internal investigation, think of the possibility that it was not an insider who leaked the secret, but someone who tracked and monitored and knew the path. I don't know, the other party is very cautious. As long as I have a little suspicion or try to counter-track the other party will directly disconnect and give up tracking. Luo Guang said with great pity, the reason why I didn't come back to life as soon as possible was because I was trying to grab this little tail. What a pity. Since Luo Guang returned to the branch alone, Minister Saul knew that Luo Guang had not caught the person who was following him. After speaking, Minister Saul took out the signature pen he had inserted in his chest and signed the document. Minister Saul said to Luo Guang, "Thank you for your cooperation, intelligence agent. There is nothing else to do after that, you can leave." Okay, Luo Guang didn't want to continue talking to the other party, so he left directly. Not long after Luo Guang left, Minister Saul took a small remote control and pressed it, and a darkroom door was opened. Minister Guslan, the confused Minister Luke, and ministers from other departments walked out and took their seats in the conference room. What do you think of Luo Guang's words? Although Minister Saul had already made a judgment in his mind, he still sought the opinions of others. I think it's okay. As soon as Minister Luke finished speaking, he lay down on the conference table and fell asleep. Minister Saul was not surprised and ignored it. He looked around and looked at other people, but most of the ministers basically said that there was nothing wrong with Luo Guang's words. Guslan, what do you think? Is there something wrong with Luo Guang's words? Minister Saul asked when he saw that Minister Guslan, who was familiar with Luo Guang, did not answer. No, I think Luo Guang is fine. Everyone else said it was fine, so Minister Guslan didn't have to give up his power to avoid suspicion and could choose to follow the crowd. Minister Guslan thought and said, the main thing is that Luo Guang was being followed, which is a more urgent problem. Intelligence officers like Luo still have certain perception and anti-tracking abilities, but we ministers and the researchers under us can't do that. We can't keep them in the institute all the time, right? This is indeed a problem. The Minister of the Security Department will stay. We will come up with a plan first, and the others will leave first. Minister Saul understood what Minister Guslan was worried about and planned to solve this problem as soon as possible. After Luo Guang confirmed that Minister Guslan was not in the virus department research area, he left the Chicago branch directly. Looking at the midday sun, so much time had passed without him realizing it. After leaving the Chicago branch, Luo Guang planned to continue his plan and began to strengthen himself. This enhancement does not mean that Luo Guang will look for new viruses to merge, but to carry out systematic combat skills learning. The first thing to learn is naturally the use of weapons, not just firearms, but also the use of various melee weapons. However, when it comes to gun shooting, Luo Guang wants to learn not special shooting techniques, but tactical shooting that can be applied to actual combat. The former is traditional static shooting, such as target shooting, etc. The shooting target is set as a target that will not fight back, and you just need to do your best. The latter combines shooting and tactics together, and the shooting target is set as an enemy that can fight back. Therefore, in addition to practicing shooting skills, you also need to learn how to effectively protect yourself behind the bunker, how to move between bunkers, indoor combat, indoor search, etc. Luo Guang found a local shooting training club based on the information in the pad machine, and directly applied to learn the tactical shooting course here. Although Luo Guang came with the identity card of the X organization, the boss did not directly allow Luo Guang to learn the tactical shooting course here, but first let Luo Guang show his skills to confirm Luo Guang's understanding of tactical shooting. Then Luo Guang broke the fastest record of the club purely by physical fitness. However, although Luo Guang is fast, accurate in shooting with a pistol, and has sufficient physical fitness, the boss, as a former Special Forces member, still found many problems in Luo Guang's process, such as unnatural movements when hiding behind a bunker, and occasionally exposing too much body area when leaning forward to shoot. Well, I understand why you chose the tactical shooting course, the boss said. Although your shooting skills are very accurate, your movements are really a bit bad. After all, few of the enemies he encountered all the way to now have guns. Luo Guang thought so and listened to the boss's words carefully. However, I think with your profession, there should not be many opportunities to shoot at the shooting range. The boss's authority in the X organization is at the same level as Luo Guang, so he can see some superficial information about Luo Guang. Boss, What do you mean? I see that you have been using guns for a long time, so I won't say too much about the safety rules of the shooting range. Anyway, you just need to pay attention. The boss saw that Luo Guang had the habit of pre-pressing his finger on the trigger of the pistol, so he mentioned it. Oh, I understand. Seeing the other party's eyes on his hand holding the gun, Luo Guang realized that the other party was talking about his golden finger, so he took out his finger and pressed it around the guard ring. It's another matter during the battle, but in this shooting range, it's better to be safe, otherwise it will be troublesome for me if an accident occurs. Seeing that Luo Guang was so easy to talk to, the boss nodded and decided to teach in person, so that Luo Guang, a rough diamond, could learn all the skills he had learned in the army. Meow, let's see if I can update another chapter tonight. Meow, I'll go to work tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 87. Chapter 85 Red Claws. Luo Guang learned very quickly. He absorbed all the skills and tactical knowledge of the shooting club owner in just 1 month. The owner was very happy to meet a student like Luo Guang who had good learning ability. On the night of Luo Guang's graduation, he called his old comrade who also taught shooting courses to show off. Although Luo Guang absorbed all the skills and knowledge and graduated directly in 1 month, he spent nearly a month on various simulation training. In addition to asking the boss to help set up simulation training with various scenarios, Luo Guang bought a set of airgun competition equipment to participate in the multi-person airgun competition held by the local airgun club. He grew up in the process of playing tricks on others and being tricked by others, and had a lot of fun. Even because of Luo Guang's somewhat excessive behavior, he became a little famous in the local airgun club. In the free time between multi-person airgun competitions, Luo Guang used his identity as an ex-organization to accelerate the learning of driving various means of transportation, such as airplane and helicopter driver's licenses. In addition, Luo Guang also dealt with one thing in the past 2 months, which was the special T Veronica virus he carried. Because it was a long time since the previous manufacturing time, Luo Guang could only spend some blood to make it again, and then use one of them to submit the task of the elixir on the pad machine. Of course, Luo Guang did not submit it in the name of elixir, but in the name of T Veronica virus. At the same time, Luo Guang also attached a shortened version of the research report, mentioning that this virus does have the effect of immortality, but the side effects are a bit big, requiring 15 years of fusion or frequent organ replacement. As for the remaining 2 virus samples, Luo Guang submitted them to Captain Sheffield. As for Captain Sheffield's question about why such a valuable thing was submitted so late, Luo Guang's answer was that the thing was too valuable, which was also a trump card and bargaining chip for himself. According to the records of Umbrella Company, he could fly a plane, but he did not have a license, so Luo Guang passed the test so quickly and did not arouse Umbrella Company's suspicion. Finally, before the latest mission came, Luo Guang finally completed the knowledge course he wanted to learn. Luo Guang lived a stable life in the past 2 months, but the situation has changed a lot. First, Claire and Steve, who had been trained in hell, returned to the lighthouse during this period and found survivors in Raccoon City for them. That was a reporter, and the camera in her hand had videos and photos of zombies eating people after the Raccoon City biochemical leak. On the TV show, Luo Guang saw Claire and the reporter named Alyssa Ashcroft appear together and tell most of the truth about the Raccoon City incident. Yes, most of the truth. Alyssa, under Claire's persuasion, did not tell what she found about the collusion between the Lighthouse and Umbrella Corporation to develop the virus. A stone stirs up 1,000 waves, which makes the Raccoon City incident, which was about to calm down, once again enter the public eye in a high-profile manner. According to the report of Organization X, the background of this news media may not be pure, so it suddenly inserted the clip of the Raccoon City zombies and the subsequent speeches of Alyssa and Claire during prime time, and directed and acted out a hacker invasion drama afterwards. However, after discussion, the Pentagon did not mobilize its forces to cover up the truth or claim that the video was fake, but directly claimed that after investigation, it was found that the content of the video was real. The Lighthouse government, which was deceived by the self-inspection report of Umbrella, will file a new lawsuit against Umbrella and handle it together with the previous biochemical leakage case. In Luo Guang's view, with the appearance of this video, the last layer of paper was broken, and the biochemical crisis was officially in the eyes of the global public, and it was the best time for Red Claw to appear. Therefore, in order to restore its reputation, under the auspices of the Lighthouse, the Red Claw Force dedicated to anti-biochemical crisis was established with funding from NATO member countries. After receiving the news that the anti-biochemical force Red Claw, funded by NATO, was born and began to widely select the first batch of members, the first reaction of Minister Saul of the Chicago branch was to send someone in as an undercover agent. And Minister Saul's first choice was Luo Guang, a senior intelligence officer who had just been investigated. For Luo Guang, this mission was also a preparation for leaving Umbrella Corporation in the future, so he naturally accepted the mission without hesitation. Luo, your mission is to lurk in it, and even if there is anything about Umbrella Corporation, you don't have to pay attention to it, Minister Saul said. Luo Guang thought that this was the result of the operation of the X organization, so that he could concentrate on the affairs of Red Claw, and confirmed, don't pay attention to anything. Yes, lurk in it and wait for my call. Minister Saul thought about it and felt that this statement was not good, so he added, of course, if you are not discovered, you can let go appropriately when performing the mission against Umbrella Corporation, but the first priority is your own lurking safety. Luo Guang nodded. This kind of mission that does not require stealth to transmit intelligence is great for spies. After leaving the Chicago branch, Luo Guang saw that there was not much time left before the start of the first selection, so he went back to the hotel to pack his luggage and started to set off for the Red Claw selection assembly point. This gathering point was set up on a peninsula in Lake Michigan. It was originally an abandoned Air Force base, but after more than 2 months of renovation, it has now become a dedicated base for the Red Claws. Although the combatants of the Red Claws base are basically not members of the X organization, the logistics personnel and civilian personnel are basically closely related to the X organization. Therefore, Luo Guang, who came to the Red Claws base, wanted to directly contact the personnel planted by the X organization. Just when Luo Guang took out his mobile phone, he saw a person running towards Luo Guang from the base. Then, under the surprised eyes of the guard, the person who came out of the Red Claws base punched Luo Guang directly. Tanya, you are still alive, because he left without saying goodbye before. Luo Guang was willing to be punched, holding his stomach and showing a painful look before saying it. After Tanya punched Luo Guang, she hugged him and patted him on the back before letting him go. She said, "We just met. Why do you sound like you're cursing me to death?" The appearance of Tanya in front of her changed a little from when she was in the valley. First, her long blonde hair that had been left over her shoulders due to retirement became short brown hair. As for her clothes, Tanya was not afraid of the cold. She wore a coffee-colored belly-bearing vest on top, revealing her six-pack abs, and a pair of black jeans on the bottom. She tied a belt around her waist, and placed an M1911 pistol on each side. "Oh, by the way, come in quickly. I'll take you to the recruit dormitory," Tanya said, and after greeting the guard at the door, she took Luo Guang inside. Seeing this, Luo Guang did not contact the people of the X organization in the Red Claws again. How could he miss such a good opportunity to beat up the novice village? Speaking of which, when I came out of the Iron Wall camp that day, I saw that you and Sergeant Tan were gone. Although I heard gunshots in the woods, there were zombies chasing me, so I ran in other directions. Luo Guang was quite happy to see Tanya still alive, but he was very surprised to meet Tanya here, because in Luo Guang's opinion, Tanya should still be surviving in the town of Turner. Sergeant Tan and I survived with great difficulty that day. Later, we moved to the North District, and I went out to look for you, but I couldn't find you. Tanya then asked, "Where did you go? How did you escape from the valley?" "After I got rid of the zombies behind me, I also looked for you, but I couldn't find you. As a result, I was accidentally forced by those zombies to go to Danforth City, and then walked along the road there, and then secretly crossed the blockade and left after a long journey," Luo Guang said. After that, Luo Guang curiously asked Tanya what happened in the town after he left, especially the situation of Marcus and others. "Lily and I all survived, but Sergeant Tan was seriously injured and died in a defensive battle while covering us on the evacuation helicopter." Tanya's tone was a little lost, and her left hand unconsciously touched the M1911 pistol on the left, and then, as if to change her mood, she talked about other things. For example, the survivors of the Wilkerson family were all wiped out in the second zombie siege, so Marcus, who had traded supplies in the past, took advantage of the situation and notified everyone to come and empty the Wilkerson family's weapons and ammunition. For example, the survivor base in the court was mutated into zombies because someone concealed his injuries. Facing unarmed civilians, this zombie killed them all, and finally led to the fall of the entire base, etc. "Whose side is the helicopter?" Luo Guang and Tanya asked as they walked in the Red Claw base. "It's the military," Tanya said with a little anger. "They said they didn't find any other survivors before, so they evacuated early." Tanya obviously didn't believe the military's lies, but she was on the military's territory at that time, so she could only nod to show her understanding. "Then why did they come back again?" Luo Guang thought of the Blood Plague King. Tanya recalled and said, "It seems that they are going to Danforth City to conduct some investigation activities, so they want to establish an outpost base in the town, and then they found the existence of us survivors." After Luo Guang knew what he wanted to know, he changed the subject and asked, "Then why are you here, Tanya?" "I want to prevent the incident in the valley from happening again, so when I knew that antibiochemical talents were recruited here, I came directly." Although Tanya answered like this, Luo Guang suspected that it was actually the X organization that secretly guided the other party to this place. "What about you?" Tanya asked when she saw Luo Guang lowering his head and thinking. Luo Guang looked up at Tanya, and seeing that Tanya was leading the way so familiarly, he said, "About the same. But Tanya, you seem to have come much earlier than me. I remember that the selection of new recruits didn't start that early, right?" "Not early, just a few weeks earlier than you. Besides, the deadline is tomorrow, so you came too late." Tanya smiled and said, "There are also several survivors of Danforth City in Red Claw. One of them is my good friend in the army, but we were later assigned to different teams. She is in charge of the women's team, and I am hanging out with those bastard men." "So what rank do you have now?" "There is also a distinction of ranks in the Red Claws," so Luo Guang asked. "Because I have experience in biohazard and good combat skills, I was temporarily appointed as an instructor. However, the new recruits have not yet arrived, so the military rank has not been officially assigned. The new recruits usually call me instructor." Tanya thought that Luo Guang should also try the position of instructor, and wondered whether she should mention it to Luo Guang when she saw her friends later. "That's not bad." Luo Guang did not ask the other party to take care of him. After all, his position at that time should be a little higher than that of an instructor. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. After a while, Luo Guang and Tanya walked into the recruit dormitory, talking and laughing. "Oh, it's a mixed dormitory," Luo Guang said, looking at the men and women in the big bunk bed. Tanya heard what Luo Guang said and said, "Yes, Luo Guang, you should be shy and not used to this kind of environment." "No," Luo Guang said, It's just that I have seen a lot of military scandals before, and there are quite a few things between men and women. Tanya understood Luo Guang's concerns and said, we have consulted the people here, and there are also special female dormitories. It's just that considering that teammates who get along with each other day and night are more likely to trust each other, the people in the special female dormitories may form a separate female army, but if the number of people there is not enough, they may also sneak in here to train together. Luo Guang nodded and looked at the people in front of him who were panicked because the instructor came. After 3 minutes, the people in the dormitory were dressed and lined up neatly in front of Tanya. At ease, Tanya's face became serious and said, he is Luo Guang, a newcomer who joined today. You get along well, and disband. After Tanya finished speaking, she asked Luo Guang to pay attention to those who showed off their power to the newcomers, and then left first to find her friends. Tanya's words were powerful, and they came as soon as she stepped out of the door. The men surrounded her, while the women stood aside and watched. Luo Guang looked at the muscular man standing in the center of the men, waiting for his provocation, and was eager to try. New here, do you know the instructor? The muscular man and the others were angry. After entering the Red Claw base, they were all taught a lesson by Tanya, who was squatting near the door. So when they saw Luo Guang, who was thinner than himself, and Tanya walked in with a smile, they felt angry for no reason. Yes, Luo Guang said directly without hiding anything. He was looking forward to the slapping scene. The muscles on the muscular man's body moved up and down, and he said with a grin, that's good. The instructor is embarrassed to teach someone she knows, so let me make up for this lesson for you. The muscular man stood up, and the others stepped back a few steps to leave space for the two. Luo Guang looked embarrassed, which made the muscular man proudly say, of course, if you don't want to get hurt, then go back to your mother. We don't need skinny trash here. Luo Guang shook his head and slowly said in the fierce eyes of the muscular man, my parents are gone. Luo Guang's words silenced the muscular man and the people around him who were making a fuss. The dormitory was silent. The female recruits who were watching on the side really wanted to speak to break the silence, but they heard Luo Guang say, besides, big brother, if you beat someone as thin as me, you will lose your right to mate here. The muscular man was angry at Luo Guang's words and said angrily, then I will crush you, a soft egg first. After saying that, the muscular man rushed up and punched Luo Guang with his right fist. Luo Guang blocked the opponent's straight punch with his left hand, and almost at the same time took a step forward to the position of the muscular man, and slapped the opponent's lungs with his right hand. The muscular man blew out a breath, and felt a pain in his chest and couldn't breathe, so he took a few steps back. Luo Guang shook his head and said, alas, I advise you to stop before the situation gets out of control. The muscular man, who was still gasping for breath and holding his chest, wanted to refute Luo Guang, but he couldn't spit out the words when he reached his lips. By the time you catch your breath, I'll have given you a lot of punches. Luo Guang shook his head, looking at the other party's unconvinced look, and explained helplessly. That's enough. Ollie, the leader of the female recruits, stood up and persuaded. But with Luo Guang's previous words about the right to mate as a prelude, the words of the female recruit leader directly ignited the fighting spirit of the muscular man Ollie, who roared and rushed towards Luo Guang. The muscular man opened his arms, bent over and sprinted, and dived to attack Luo Guang. Be careful. As soon as the female soldier leader finished speaking, she saw the muscular man being easily subdued by Luo Guang. Luo Guang took a half step back with his feet to prevent the opponent from grabbing his legs. He did not stop his hands and pressed one hand on Oli's head and pushed down. At the same time, his left hand quickly passed through his arm and lifted it up, turning the sturdy Oli to the right. In order to protect his arm from being broken, the body's instinctive reaction was faster than Oli's thinking. Oli turned to the right uncontrollably under Luo Guang's force, and then sat on the ground. Luo Guang did not give up this opportunity. He pushed hard and pulled his hand out at the same time, making Oli lie on the ground. After knocking Oli to the ground this time, Luo Guang controlled the force and knocked him unconscious. Then he stood up and looked at the people around him. Everyone in the recruit dormitory stared at the scene with wide eyes. If the two were of similar size, perhaps others would not be so surprised, but seeing Luo Guang, who was smaller than Oli, easily defeated Oli, the strong contrast made everyone shudder. The male recruits who were making a fuss met Luo Guang's gaze and couldn't help but look away, while the female recruits on the other side looked at Luo Guang with interest. The company will have a New Year's dinner at noon tomorrow, and update in the evening. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 88. Chapter 86 Scenario Training. Luo Guang patted the non-existent dust on his clothes and politely asked the male recruit nearest him, "Is there any free bed in the dormitory?" Although Luo Guang knew where there were empty beds in the dormitory, Luo Guang still asked the people here first. Because the people here all came in simple clothes, Luo Guang could not tell which beds were for female soldiers and which were for male soldiers. Therefore, Luo Guang avoided arriving early and formed some kind of tacit understanding between them, such as separating men and women on separate sides. In this case, I asked one more question. The male recruits are all over there. The male recruit who was looked at by Luo Guang pointed to himself. After being stunned for a moment, he pointed to another place for Luo Guang. There was a double bed there with no signs of being turned over, and the quilt was neatly placed on it, but the empty bed over there was not in a good position, far away from the window and out of direct sunlight. Luo Guang frowned, sighed, and forgot about it, thinking that he probably wouldn't stay here for too long. "Thank you." Luo Guang thanked the person who pointed out the position for him. He ignored Ollie, who was still lying on the ground, and walked towards the bed. However, just when Luo Guang was about to put down his backpack and sit on it, the leader of the female recruits suddenly said, "Luo Guang, if you don't mind, we also have space here, and the ventilation and lighting are good." There are not many female recruits in the dormitory. They are basically concentrated in the good beds on the window side of the dormitory, and because there are few people, there are still many empty beds there. Since the other party invited him, Luo Guang didn't want to show off his face in front of everyone, so he walked over with the envious eyes of all his male compatriots. 17 men and 8 women. Luo Guang was confirming that the number of recruits was much less than expected. Is it because the USS recruits really failed to arrive? Judging from the appearance and figure of these people, most of them should be over 30, Luo Guang thought, looking at the female recruits who were peeking at him, and suddenly thought of the word wolf-like. Although the female recruits here are not in Luo Guang's strike zone in appearance, their bodies are of different ages, and most of them are as big as they should be and as round as they should be. Luo Guang was wondering if he would be attacked at night tonight. He sat on the bed and looked at his watch. He arrived at the Red Claw base around 10 a.m. and it was already past 11 noon. It should be time for lunch. Just as Luo Guang was thinking about what kind of meals a NATO-sponsored force would have, the leader of the female recruits came over and said, "My name is BZ Karen." "Nice to meet you, Luo Guang." When BZ said this, before Luo Guang raised his head, he licked his dry lips. "Hello, BZ." Since the other party took the initiative to say hello, Luo Guang replied and shook the other party's extended hand. He wanted to ask who was not asking, so he continued, "I just came here, can you tell me the arrangements for us new recruits?" "I'm happy to oblige." After BSI finished speaking, she sat next to Luo Guang very naturally. She wore a vest and then a camouflage long-sleeved shirt. Luo Guang, who had keen eyes, immediately noticed that there seemed to be a vacuum above BZ. BZ, who was accustomed to men's gazes, immediately noticed Luo Guang's gaze, puffed out her chest, and said, "The recruit training has not officially started yet. We have actually been doing simple test training under instructor Tanya for the past few days." So we don't know what the training will be like after it officially starts, and the instructor hasn't said anything. Before Luo Guang could ask about the test training, BZ over there asked straight to the point, by the way, Luo Guang, you know instructor Tanya, are you guys in a relationship? I see you are talking and laughing, instructor Tanya seems reluctant to teach you a lesson. No, they're just friends. As for the lack of lessons, that's because we occasionally spar with each other, so Tanya knows my abilities. Luo Guang found an excuse to reply, withdrew his gaze, looked at BZ, and said, what is test training? Seeing that Luo Guang kept looking into her eyes after retracting his gaze, BZ couldn't help but give Luo Guang a high look. She rarely met people who could resist the huge charm on her chest. She explained with a smile, it's because of our fighting skills for some tests, you see we don't have many people here. In fact, it's because many people were screened out by the instructor, and some men couldn't stand being easily solved by instructor Tanya and ran away in shame. BZ pointed at herself and said, I am a former Marine Corps. Mel, the guy in the bed next to you, is a former National Guard. The others are basically retired soldiers or former mercenaries. Where are you, Luo Guang? Where are you? Come out. The other party asked which army Luo Guang came from, but Luo Guang didn't have that kind of background. First of all, he couldn't say that he was an intelligence agent. Saying that he was an air rifle enthusiast didn't seem to explain why he could easily deal with Ollie, and in this case, you will have to suppress your performance in future training. So after thinking for a while, Luo Guangke said, the name of the unit needs to be kept secret. BZ heard Luo Guang's words and understood that the opponent was probably from the Special Forces, but she was still a little dissatisfied as she bumped into Luo Guang shoulder to shoulder. The flesh on her chest was not restrained by underwear. She directly hit him with the ball and said, just say, can you tell me which army he belongs to? Army. Luo Guang made nonsense. To be honest, he didn't know much about the composition of the lighthouse country's troops. Although Luo Guang only said that he was from the army, BZ, who was familiar with various special forces in the lighthouse country, immediately narrowed the scope of Luo Guang's troops to those special forces that would accept Asians. The male recruits who listened to Luo Guang's chat with their ears pricked up could not help but look sympathetically at the muscular man Ollie who was still lying on the ground. None of the people here were from the special forces. They never expected that retired talents from the special forces would come here. In addition, Luo Guang's youthful appearance aroused their contempt. They couldn't help but secretly curse Luo Guang for pretending to be a pig. Tiger. Speaking of which, you have all been tested, so you are still testing these days, Luo Guang changed the subject. Normally, isn't testing once enough? BZ understood why Luo Guang was confused and said, it's said to be a test, but it's also a situation-based training. At the same time, we are also forming teams with different people to find the most suitable partner for us. With that said, BZ put a hand on Luo Guang's thigh, leaned close to Luo Guang and said, of course, this suitability also includes physical suitability. Ahem. Luo Guang held BZ's shoulders, gently pushed them away a little, and said, how many people will be in a group during the test? Although she was pushed away by Luo Guang, BZ felt the gentleness in the other person's movements and thought of the unique shyness of Asians, so she didn't pay too much attention to it. Instead, she thought this was Luo Guang's cuteness and said, 2 to 4 as a team, I have 2 suitable ones here for the time being. I am responsible for heavy firepower, and the other 2 are a sniper and a reconnaissance expert. Speaking of this, Luo Guang, which position are you good at? Me? I'm a bit of a snake oil character in everything, right? Luo Guang really hasn't thought about his position in the team. After all, Luo Guang is more accustomed to acting alone. If he acts in a team with others, he will not be the one to lead the way. Yes, he is responsible for filling the position. To put it bluntly, Luo Guang often puts himself in a supporting position when cooperating with others, just like when he and Tanya were blowing up the iron wall, he would not rely on his own ability to succeed. Disobey instructions and arrangements. Oh, BZ blinked. Although the special forces give people the impression of being omnipotent, she knows that even in the special forces, everyone has their own strengths, and in order to train the team a tacit understanding usually has one or two fixed positions. But Luo Guang had said so, and BZ didn't dwell too much. She was thinking that during the test training in the afternoon, she might be able to let Luo Guang join her team and try to get 4 people together. I don't know if it was because he defeated Ollie, the boss of the male soldiers in the dormitory, so after BZ finished talking to her, other people came over one after another to chat with Luo Guang and introduce themselves and the team members. Condition. While Luo Guang was dealing with the crowd, he was thinking in his mind whether he had gone to the wrong place. There was always the possibility of going to prison by himself, just like being worshipped by those people at the dock. The lunch meal was not bad. After resting for an hour, everyone in the dormitory gathered the equipment they were good at and headed to the training ground. There were only Tanya, Luo Guang, and others in the huge training ground. Luo Guang didn't see anyone in the women's dormitory, but Luo Guang saw someone on the tower in the distance looking at them with a telescope. Luo Guang, why don't you wear the military uniform here? Tanya saw that Luo Guang was dressed the same as when they met in the morning. The only difference was that he had an extra M4S90 shotgun in his hand. That was Luo Guang's in the small town of Tenable. The same weapon used. Looking at Luo Guang's clothes, which were almost the same as those in Trumbull Valley, Tanya thought of the valley for a moment. I'm used to wearing this suit, Luo Guang said, and there are no mandatory provisions in the rules and regulations of the Red Claw Army. Tanya thought that the system here was similar to that in the military, and naturally she had not understood the rules and regulations of Red Claw. However, considering that the rules and regulations could be known to be true or false upon checking, there was no need for Luo Guang to lie to herself, so she nodded. However, some of the people around Luo Guang had tangled expressions on their faces. They also wanted to wear their previous battle clothes, but they were all scolded mercilessly by Tanya without any questioning at all. Tanya glanced around and said, "There are 26 recruits in total now. I remember that your team has been basically finalized last time. Then Luo Guang, you can form a team with me first." Luo Guang nodded. Although BZ proposed to join the opponent's team for a try in the afternoon during lunch, since the instructor spoke, Luo Guang did not raise any objection. However, Ollie, who had regained consciousness, objected anxiously. "Report." "Tell me," Tanya said. "There is still room in our team, let Luo Guang join and give it a try." Ollie liked women like Tanya, so he quickly suggested that Luo Guang be added to his team to prevent Luo Guang from having a chance to be alone with Tanya. Report. Unexpectedly, as soon as Ollie finished speaking, BZ also reported that she also wanted to invite Luo Guang to join, and she made the reservation at noon. Tanya didn't expect Luo Guang to be so popular, so she looked at Luo Guang and asked Luo Guang to make a decision. Luo Guang also reported, and then said, "It is true that I agreed to BZ's invitation at noon." Luo Guang didn't want to sweat and have a passionate collision with the muscular man. Tanya nodded and asked Luo Guang to join BZ's group. Ollie on the other side was not disappointed, but looked relieved. "Ollie, you start first, others get ready." After Tanya finished speaking, she said to Luo Guang, "Luo Guang, come here." Luo Guang heard Tanya's words, followed him and walked aside. "Luo, I saw that you also had antibiochemical experience in Trumbull Valley. Considering that we will expand in the future, I recommended you to join the instructor team." Tanya felt that Luo Guang had a high probability of being with her. They are in the same position, so his attitude towards Luo Guang is different from that towards other recruits. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Luo Guang pointed to the other side of the tower and said, in other words, the person looking over here with a telescope on the tower may be the person responsible for the review. Tanya looked over, but because the distance was too far, she could just barely see someone standing by the glass window. The person holding the telescope thought it was an accident when he saw Luo Guang pointing towards him, but after seeing Luo Guang say something, Tanya also looked towards him, which made him praise her. I'm not sure if that's the person over there. Anyway, pay attention when you train later. I rarely recommend people. After Tanya said this, she asked Luo Guang to return to the team. Luo, what did the instructor say to you? BZ became curious and asked in a low voice. Others in the group also pricked up their ears and listened. Tanya said that there are high-level people on the tower observing us. They seem to be reviewing our recent situation and asking us to perform better. Luo Guang said this, but BZ, who was more thoughtful, heard something else. BZ heard from a male employee at the base that the Red Claws had a special operations team that enjoyed many privileges, so she felt that this might not only be a recent review, but also a secret selection. No matter what, since someone from the top is watching, this must seize the opportunity to show off, and the rest of the team thinks so too. After a while, Ollie's group ran out, gray-haired and gray-faced, with patches of red and green on their bodies, looking very funny. It seems that this training is very difficult. I stayed next to Luo Guang and whispered, although Ollie's group is not satisfied with the people, they are the strongest group in the recent training. Look at how miserable they are. So, I guess today's training will be hard to deal with. At the same time, BZ became more convinced that a secret selection was really going on. Luo Guang nodded and braced himself to avoid capsizing in the gutter later. While waiting, Luo Guang and his team were not idle, but were discussing training later. BZ saw that Luo Guang was holding a shotgun, so she asked Luo Guang to take the leading position, while the original scouts moved to the rear to cooperate with the snipers. According to BZ, during the scenario training, different characters will be arranged in various places, including biological and chemical weapons represented by zombies, human enemies with guns and paintballs, and civilians without any weapons, so in the advancement be very careful when doing so. After the training started, everyone knew that the mission of the scenario training was in a building, but at this time the snipers in the team were already carrying an M40A2 sniper rifle as the main weapon and a Scorpion-type assault rifle. Using a gun for self-defense is equivalent to sealing away most of the sniper's strength. Some people made requests to change weapons, but they were all rejected by Tanya, explaining, generally, the places where biohazards occur are mainly in cities, towns, and other areas, with complex and diverse environments, so you have to hold the same type of gun. To face various environments, this is the main content of this training. Because Luo Guang's team was drawn last, the sun had already started to set by the time Luo Guang and the others arrived. Today's Meow, I saw someone talking about groups, I'm studying how to do it, and thinking about what group names would be good for Meows. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 89. Chapter 87. Sweeping the building. The green light to start the operation came on, and Luo Guang and Hongyi Fengzi, who was in charge of reconnaissance, walked quickly to the back door of the building and waited, while the other two hid outside the death funnel at the door, forming crossfire and aiming inside. This training building is 3 stories high and has a rectangular structure. There are stairs on both sides and in the middle, and the back door is on the east side of the stairs. Luo Guang looked at Fengzi, and after confirming that he and the people behind him were ready, he made a flash entry gesture and raised his hand to start the countdown, 3, 2, 1. After the countdown was over, Luo Guang fired a shot to knock down the door lock, and immediately retreated behind the wall without rushing in. Fengzi, who was on the other side of the door, was responsible for gently pushing open a crack in the door after Luo Guang knocked down the door lock, and then a flash stun grenade was thrown in. After a flash and sonic boom, Feng Zi pushed the door open, and the two people with guns behind Luo Guang and the others nodded to indicate that there was no enemy. Just as Luo Guang and Feng Zi were cross-checking the other side of the wall for enemies and preparing to enter, a grenade fell, scaring Luo Guang and Feng Zi to retreat quickly. After the fake grenade went off, Luo Guang and Feng Zi confirmed again that there was no trap before going in and searching their own side. Safe. As soon as Luo Guang finished searching, he immediately leaned against the wall and aimed his gun at the area above the stairs. Safe. After the scout reported, BZ and Sniper Ofer followed up one after another, standing behind Luo Guang and Feng Zi respectively. Women are more careful and prudent, so BZ asked Luo Guang to bring as many throwing objects as possible, so in addition to Scout Feng Zi and Sniper Ofer, Luo Guang and BZ brought a lot of throwing objects. After everyone entered the back door, there was a staircase, and the mission goal of Luo Guang and others was to simply clean the floor. Luo Guang and his companions came to the second floor, and as soon as the door was opened, there was a zombie-like sign on the ground in front of them, rushing towards the door. There is an arm-length stick on each side of the sign, which simulates the hands of zombies, except that the front of the stick is not a claw, but two red spheres. As long as the target is hit, a red mark will be left on the target. Luo Guang and others were not in front of the door, so BZ, who was holding a gun on the stairs, shot and smashed the sensor on the head of the zombie sign that missed. The zombie sign is considered a successful kill only if it hits the head sensor, and the light of the flash bomb can directly turn off the sensor camera temporarily, so Luo Guang and others threw flash bombs when they entered the door before. Luo Guang was not scared by the sudden attack this time. After being frightened by the accident at the Raccoon City Police Department, Luo Guang, who reflected on himself, would substitute the scary routines of horror movies into real scenes as long as he entered the combat state. For example, when he just opened the door, Luo Guang thought of the possibility of this kind of door-opening kill in advance. As long as it is spoiled, the horror movie that makes people feel deeply scared will not be scary anymore. After dealing with the zombie card, Luo Guang leaned sideways and peeked out to check the situation in the corridor. Looking around, the doors on both sides were all closed. The apartment-style building was not suitable for close combat with the sniper or for holding the M40A2 sniper rifle, so BIS arranged for Orfer to cover her back with a Scorpion submachine gun, while she was responsible for the corridor guard. If it was Luo Guang, knowing his own ability, he would definitely let the other three control the corridor and ensure the retreat, while he would clean up the room alone. However, after all, the captain of this team was BIS, and Luo Guang's plan was not in line with common sense, so Luo Guang did not speak and waited for BIS's instructions. Luo, you and Feng Zi go to clean up the room together, and Orfer and I will guard the stairs as expected, BIS arranged for Feng Zi, who used a short submachine gun, to cooperate with her. The scout named Feng Zi was of Japanese descent. He was short and held an MP5K submachine gun in his hand. It was a shortened version of the MP5 submachine gun, but it retained the butt stock, equipped with a front grip and a small drum magazine. Luo Guang nodded, and the two walked along the wall on the same side to the first door on the left. After getting in position, Feng Zi did not walk to the other side of the door, but half-crouched and aimed sideways at the left side of the corridor. Although BZ was on guard in the stairwell, because of Luo Guang's position, some of the rays were blocked, so Feng Zi could only be on guard temporarily, and at the same time, Feng Zi could be slightly prepared for the enemy who might suddenly appear at the opposite door. After all, Feng Zi was also worried that Luo Guang would focus all his attention on the left door when attacking the room, and slightly ignore the defense of other directions. Luo Guang reached out and twisted the door handle. After realizing that the door was not locked, Luo Guang gently pushed it in to open a gap. Because there might be civilians in the training building, Luo Guang did not dare to throw a grenade in, but threw a flash stun grenade. The moment the explosion sounded, Luo Guang started to rush in, and Feng Zi was ready to follow Luo Guang in. However, Just as Feng Ziyi entered the room and turned around to search the room with Luo Guang, the door opposite suddenly opened outwards, and a sign of a gunman appeared. There was a paintball gun in the hand position of the sign, and he kept shooting paintballs at the door on Luo Guang's side. Luo Guang heard the sound of the door opening behind him, and directly used a semi-automatic shotgun in one hand to clear the zombie signs installed on the slide rail in the room, and with the other hand, he directly grabbed Feng Ziyi's backpack and dragged him behind the wall on his side. Thank you. Feng Ziyi, who was close to Luo Guang, did not stop while talking. He avoided the rays of the bandit's sign opposite, turned around and half-crouched, and directly fired at the position of the bandit's sign. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Thanks to the low recoil of the MP5K submachine gun, Feng Ziyi successfully hit the fatal point on the bandit's sign after a round of shooting, and then the paintball shooting stopped. Because the sound of Luo Guang's shotgun and Feng Ziyi's submachine gun sounded, BZ and the others knew that Luo Guang should have escaped and was not eliminated. Reload. Luo Guang asked Feng Ziyi, who still had half of the bullets, to cover him, and he stepped aside, confirmed safety with a pistol, and reloaded at the door of the bathroom in the room. After Luo Guang finished reloading the bullets, it was Feng Ziyi's turn to change a 30-round magazine. Because the drum magazine was not light, Feng Ziyi only brought a spare one. After the two of them changed their bullets, they searched the room again with Feng Ziyi. After confirming that it was safe, they prepared to leave the room. However, in the house opposite, the sign of the gangster that had been killed before had fallen down, revealing the space behind. Just as Luo Guang raised his gun and went out, half of the gangster sign suddenly popped out diagonally in the space, but Luo Guang had predicted the situation after seeing the first sign on the opposite side fall down, so the half of the gangster sign was shot down by Luo Guang as soon as it popped out. However, this was not the end. At the same time as the half sign, there was also an upside-down Special Forces enemy sign that suddenly appeared at the ceiling exhaust port, and it was a round of strafing at the staircase where BZ and the others were. BZ's training these days was also the first time she encountered such an enemy, so the first reaction of BZ, who was on alert, was to roll to the side to save herself, but because she used too much force, she hit the wall directly and cursed angrily. Luo Guang fired a shot before the Special Forces sign retracted. After successfully dealing with the enemy, Luo Guang retreated behind the bunker and heard BZ's angry curse. He didn't know what was going on over there, so he asked, BZ. BZ is checking the situation and will report back later, Sniper Ofer reported, while BZ was checking if she was hit by a paintball. That's good. Since BZ was checking, Luo Guang didn't need to move forward, but waited for BZ to finish checking. In fact, the paintballs can also feel when they hit the body, but it is easy to be ignored in a tense situation, so BZ needs to check carefully. I'm not hit. The inspection was completed quickly. After BZ reported, she judged, it seems that the difficulty of this battle is the various attacks that are hard to defend against. Even the small vents on the ceiling may hide enemies, so everyone should pay attention. Received. Everyone replied, and then continued to clean up the rooms one by one. Just as Luo Guang and the other four gradually began to clean up the rooms on the second floor, Tanya was directing her assistants at the control console next to the training ground to activate various mechanisms to cause trouble for Luo Guang and others. The enemy signs that Luo Guang and others were experiencing suddenly were not all triggered by induction. Some were activated in advance by Tanya's men. After Luo Guang was about to enter the training building, the person who was observing Luo Guang on the tower drove to the training ground control console. The person who was observing Luo Guang was Tanya's friend Samus Alan, the commander-in-chief of the Red Claws. Samus looked at Luo Guang's performance and said, "The person you recommended looks very good, very sensitive, and has a fast reaction speed. Yes, you also saw that the moment the door behind him suddenly opened, Luo Guang switched from holding the gun with both hands to holding it with one hand, and then he didn't turn his head and directly saved his teammates, and at the same time solved the zombies that were rushing towards him. Tanya felt that Luo Guang was much more powerful than she thought, but she didn't notice this when she was in the valley. And he was very calm when encountering various sudden attacks, without any panic. So far, his hit rate is still 100%, right? Samus said. That's right, but he used a shotgun and shot at close range, which is normal, right? Tanya looked at the enemy signs that Luo Guang had dealt with, counted them, and said, no, the bullets were all on the target, and this was the result of one-handed shooting. So it seems that Luo Guang must be very strong to withstand the recoil. I heard that he knocked down a giant when he first arrived at the recruit dormitory. Samus continued, and did you see it, Tanya? Although his ability is higher than others, he has always cooperated with the team. Hearing Samu's words, Tanya suddenly understood why she had never noticed how strong Luo Guang was. Because no matter how strong a person's ability is, it is not the time to be heroic in a team. After understanding this, Tanya smiled bitterly and said, that is to say, Luo Guang is just cooperating with BZ and the others. His current performance is not his true strength. No wonder Luo Guang looked so relaxed all the way. But among these new recruits, I don't think anyone can keep up with Luo Guang. Tanya has tested other new recruits, so she knows that judging from the performance of others, those new recruits can't keep up with Luo Guang's pace at all, and letting Luo Guang cooperate with others is a waste. Yes. Samus actually knew that Luo Guang was the captain of the Special Operations Force that was scheduled to be airborne from above, but she didn't like this airdropped connection, so she didn't tell her about Luo Guang after Tanya told her. Instead, she pretended that she didn't know Luo Guang's true identity and left Luo Guang in the recruits' dormitory for closer observation. Tanya and Assam continued to observe Luo Guang's training. This chapter is not finished yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. At this time, the four-person team finally suffered a casualty while searching the sixth room, which was the last room on the second floor. While searching the room, Fengzi was killed by a creature hiding in the darkness under the corner. The zombie who was standing was hit and eliminated directly. BZ and Afer are still surviving, but they are facing a new trouble, that is, how to distribute work when one person is missing. One person attacking a room is dozens of times more dangerous than two people. If Luo Guang is allowed to attack a room alone, BZ feels it is too dangerous, so she plans to assist Luo Guang herself and let Afer fight. Stay in the corridor to ensure an escape route. But in this case, Afer should pay attention to the situation above and below the stairs and in the corridor at the same time. No, I can do it by myself, Luo Guang objected after hearing BZ's instructions, and then explained, I don't have teammates around me, so I can react immediately to attack the enemy that suddenly appears. After all, he and others were using live ammunition, so even for training, Luo Guang still had concerns. What Luo Guang means is that if he acts alone, he can save the process of identifying friends and foes, allowing him to react as quickly as possible. BZ did not answer immediately, and Luo Guang was also waiting for BZ's words in the room that was confirmed to be safe. At the training ground console on the other side, Tanya, who was monitoring the training team's communications, also asked Samus the same question. If it were Samus, would he allow Luo Guang to search the room alone? Samus did not answer immediately. After a long time, he said, if I knew Luo Guang's ability, I would. If I didn't know it like BZ, then I would refuse like BZ. As Samus expected, as soon as the words were spoken, BZ rejected Luo Guang's suggestion and said, Luo Guang, I know you are from the Special Forces, and it is common to act alone, but we are a team now. Luo Guang didn't answer immediately. He sighed and then replied, okay. Tanya saw the helpless expression on Luo Guang's face and said, oh, it seems that Luo Guang feels a little uncomfortable in a team that can't keep up with him. Isn't that what you said, Tanya, to let them get used to using unsuitable weapons in various situations, Samus pointed at BZ and Afur and said, "Let's not mention BZ's use of a light machine gun. You how can awful, a sniper, show off his true abilities in the building? Isn't it a game we play together? I never thought that Luo Guang was so powerful at that time. Let's not talk about marksmanship. At that time, Luo Guang's tactical quality was not as high as it is now." Tanya touched her hair and said, "It's really hard to come up with a group name. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 90. Chapter 88. Captain of the Special Operations Team. Luo Guang was the last group to enter the training. It can be said that whether anyone can pass the training depends on Luo Guang's group, so when the four of them walked out, they were immediately looked at by everyone. After Luo Guang and others entered the training building, others no longer had to keep the training content secret and began to communicate about their training situations. Luo Guang, BSI, and Afur are not out. This training was very difficult, so Ali and others were very surprised that 3 people in BZ's group survived. Hearing Ali's words, Bis and Afur turned around, revealing the colorful paintball marks on their backs. "Only Luo Guang is not out." BZ turned back and said. "Even if only one person passes, it is enough to surprise the surrounding recruits." Looking at the position of the Red Seal, Fengzi was probably hit by the zombies lying on the ground and knocked out directly. Judging from the situation of BZ and Afur, it seems that they were attacked by gangsters or special forces. "Success," one of them said when he saw the injured parts of BZ and the others. "That's right, I really didn't expect that. We were almost done with the mission, but in the end a few more enemies jumped out and surrounded us, and the places where the enemies appeared were all the places we had cleaned up before." BZ was a little angry, after working hard for so long, and finally but the success fell short. "But thanks to BZ, you sacrifice yourself to block the gun for me, so I can survive." Luo Guang told BZ the reason for his survival and comforted BZ. When Oli heard Luo Guang's words, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. When he secretly scolded Luo Guang for eating soft food, he heard BZ's reply to Luo Guang. "Luo, don't be humble. It's just because when we were advancing, I happened to be walking behind you and blocked the enemy's attack. Besides, fortunately you reacted and knocked down the enemy in front directly. Otherwise, I would not only be behind you, but also in front of you. Everyone will be shot, and our team will be wiped out." BZ herself didn't react at the time, and there was no time for her to think about sacrificing for her teammates. She honestly said that it was just a coincidence. Although the training was over, Tanya did not appear immediately. Instead, as usual, the entire team was asked to conduct self-examination together after completing the training, so Tanya and Samus were not in a hurry to appear in front of everyone. "Oh, the enemies in this training are all in such tricky and weird positions. It's not just BZ and you. When we talked before, some people also left like this." After someone mentioned this, someone immediately agreed. "That's right. It's just that I feel even more cunning than before. I tense up every step I take, for fear that an enemy will pop out of that corner. And the enemy combination is also very complicated. In the room I searched, there were gun-wielding gangsters and kidnapped bunny girls in the living room. Then the instructor hit a zombie in the toilet and made a cry-like sound. I thought it was a civilian child, but as soon as he entered, he was immediately knocked out by the zombie brand. Forget it, I also encountered a gangster character pretending to be a zombie. I thought it was a room full of zombies, but it turned out that they were all gangsters pretending to be zombies. As a result, my first reaction at that time was to shoot directly instead of avoiding the attack." Some people raised their eyebrows, and others took the opportunity to complain about the insidious aspects of this training. "By the way, BZ, Have you encountered any particularly dangerous situations? Someone was curious about BZ and the other's difficulty. BZ sighed and said, "Stop talking, we have encountered enemies at almost every step since we cleaned the first room. If it weren't for Luo Guang's help, we would have suffered casualties when we searched the first room. That's right, if Luo Guang hadn't pulled me out, I would have been attacked and killed by the gangsters from the opposite door." After Fengzi was out of the game, he came to the end area to wait for his teammates to finish. There, you can see the situation of his teammates who are still training. It can also be regarded as the spectator area. Therefore, Fengzi, who saw Luo Guang's performance along the way, said this. Looked at Luo Guang with admiration. Thinking about it this way, it turns out that Luo Guang wasn't bragging before. Someone muttered, not believing that such a young Luo Guang said that he was a special forces member. As a result, BSI heard this and slapped the other party on the head, saying, after seeing Luo Guang's ability to easily defeat Ollie, do you still think Luo Guang is bragging? The person who was knocked on the head saw that it was BZ who knocked him, so he did not dare to fight back, otherwise the other male recruits would not let him go, and quickly said, Luo Guang knows Chinese Kung Fu, so it is normal for him to be able to easily deal with Ollie, and no matter how strong your Kung Fu is, you are still afraid of bullets, which cannot be confused with tactical ability. Hey, Ollie appeared behind the opponent and said, it's so simple. I was underestimating the enemy, wasn't I? Yes, because I am thin. That's why Ollie didn't try his best, Luo Guang joked, adding an accent to the word thin. Hearing Luo Guang's words, Ollie's face darkened, and he rolled up his sleeves to have another men's duel with Luo Guang. Okay, what are you making a fuss about? Tanya's voice suddenly appeared from the side, startling everyone present. Of course, everyone here does not include Luo Guang. Tanya habitually hid her footsteps, but the person next to her did not. Luo Guang looked at the tall blonde woman next to Tanya. There was a scar on her face from her forehead to her lips, which ruined the overall beauty of her face, which made Luo Guang feel pity. Line up, Tanya gave the order, and everyone lined up quickly like a conditioned reflex. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. The team was arranged in the form of team numbers, and there were 2 positions between the teams, so Luo Guang stood with Bis and the others, and the captain was Bis, so Bis, who was slightly shorter than Luo Guang, stood on the far right of the team. Seeing these people line up so quickly, Tanya's friend Samus Allen nodded and said, Tanya, you have trained well. Thank you, commander of the troops, Tanya saluted. Tanya's words were also to point out the other party's identity, suggesting that these new recruits under her command should not embarrass themselves. Well, Samus glanced at everyone and said, these are all the people you have screened, right? Yes, according to your instructions, those who are unqualified have been screened out in advance. These are people with good combat qualities or outstanding in some aspects, Tanya replied. Very good, but I just watched their training, it seems that only one team succeeded, and they were careless because it was close to the end, resulting in only one person passing the level. Samus's words were directed at Bis. Report. Bis stepped forward and reported. Hold it for me first. Samus did not let Bis speak, and continued what he had just said, saying, you have been acting cautiously in the front, but because of the last carelessness, you did not continue to use the front and back guard formation to advance steadily. Do you look down on our simulated training? Speak. No, Bis answered loudly. Then why were you careless? Samus continued to ask. Because there should not be enemies in that place. The place where the enemy appeared behind him was cleaned up by Luo Guang and others, so Bis felt that she had checked that the place behind her was safe, and thus relaxed her vigilance behind her in order to retreat quickly at the last moment. Samus said even more angrily, will there be no enemy walking to the place you searched 5 seconds ago? 5 seconds later? Do you think that the enemies you will face in the future will be the kind that won't move by themselves? Bis pursed her lips and said, "I understand." Bis heard what Samu said and it made sense. She was also reflecting on herself at this time. She said that she didn't despise it, but she found that she still despised these trainings in her subconscious. After the three-person team of Bis, Fengzi, and Ofer was basically formed, their team was also invincible in training, overcoming various difficulties many times and successfully passing the level. This first made Bis start to think that those trainings were just so-so. Then, as the team formed by Oli gradually took shape, Bis's performance was always behind Oli's team, so Bis invited Luo Guang, who could defeat Oli, and was excited about becoming the first team to pass the level, so she relaxed her vigilance and hoped to complete the training quickly. "BZ, you are mainly concerned about the problem you just mentioned. You must remember that you are the captain now and are responsible for your subordinates. You cannot let your guard down until the mission is over. And Ofer, as a sniper, you are not calm enough under the high pressure of being attacked by surprise. You have become a frightened bird. If Luo Guang had not pressed your submachine gun in time, did you intend to shoot the civilians who just appeared into a sieve? And Fengzi, your combat ability was sufficient in the previous army, and Tanya kept you because she saw your ability to analyze on-site intelligence, but your current combat ability is obviously one level lower than that of other teammates, so you have to continue to work hard to become stronger." After Samus brought up the problems of BZ's team training at one time, he did not continue to preach to the other team members. He turned to Luo Guang and said, "As a new recruit who just came in, you are the only survivor in this enhanced training. What do you think of this training?" Samus wanted to ask Luo Guang about his feelings about this training before revealing Luo Guang's identity. After all, this was Samus's careful preparation to test Luo Guang. No opinion. If he were a Lone Ranger, Luo Guang would say that the other party's training was designed by those mentally ill patients with endocrine disorders, or that the training was simple and unreasonable. But he was a new recruit after all. If he said that the training was simple, wouldn't it be a slap in the face of those who didn't survive? He. Samus didn't care whether Luo Guang's words were true or false. She knew from Luo Guang's expression during the training that this training was not difficult for Luo Guang at all. The only difficulty was about how to protect teammates. The other party smiled but didn't say anything, and Luo Guang didn't say anything again. Tanya, who was standing aside, looked at the two people looking at each other. For a moment, she didn't understand what was going on, and thought that the two had reached some kind of tacit understanding. "Okay, this training, Bis, this is the situation of your team. I can see that Luo Guang cooperates well with your team. But I'm sorry, Luo Guang can't stay in your team." Samus saw his past shadow in Bis, so compared with the more capable Ollie, Samus likes the competitive Bis more, so he apologized to her. "What? Commander, Luo Guang is very suitable for our team. With him, we can exert better combat effectiveness. After we run in, it will definitely make you feel bright." BZ, like Tanya, did not realize when working with Luo Guang that Luo Guang suppressed his true strength in order to match the team's rhythm. For example, if only Luo Guang was left alone in the end and was surrounded, Luo Guang would solve the enemy in front while he had already taken out a pistol in his right hand and started shooting simultaneously at the enemies behind him. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Samus and Tanya both saw on the monitor that Luo Guang was about to draw his pistol when he was surrounded, but BZ was behind him, causing him to pause in his final movement. "The problem is that because he took care of you, he didn't use all his strength." Sam's words were undoubtedly saying that BZ and others were holding Luo Guang back. What? The other three people couldn't stand still and all looked at Luo Guang, who looked innocent. Luo Guang really didn't feel that his teammates were holding him back. After all, he was not an ordinary person now. "Let me just mention one thing, how many times have you been rescued by Luo Guang?" Samu said directly without waiting for BZ and the others to answer, BZ twice, for once, Fengzi 4 times. BZ and the others didn't reply, but Ollie and the others opened their mouths in surprise when they heard this. Neither Ollie nor the others thought that Luo Guang would still be able to save others during such a difficult training. Even Ollie couldn't help but regret that he didn't have a good relationship with Luo Guang. After all, it was just training now, but if he went to the battlefield, then he is the Lord who can save lives. But if he is not in our team, will Luo Guang go to Ollie's team? Ollie and his team already have breakthrough players, so I don't think it will be better than staying in our team. And after Luo Guang joins us, the overall structure of the team is also more reasonable, BZ argued. Tanya stood up and said, Bis, you misunderstood the commander. You must have been curious why I didn't test Luo Guang before, right? That's because Luo Guang was also a person who survived the biohazard outbreak area. Samu still didn't tell Tanya about Luo Guang's true identity, so Tanya thought Samu's meant to take Luo Guang out as an instructor. What? Luo Guang is a survivor of Raccoon City, the recruits were surprised for the first time today. Because the affairs of Trumbull Valley had not been made public, the recruits misunderstood that the area Tanya mentioned was Raccoon City, but Tanya did not correct them. After all, the affairs of the valley were still kept secret. So, I recommended Luo Guang to become a member of our Red Claw Troop instructors. Originally, Tanya only planned to let Luo Guang be the instructor in dealing with biological crisis, but after seeing Luo Guang's performance today, she found that Luo Guang should be able to handle teaching in other aspects as well. No, Luo Guang is the appointed captain of the Special Operations Team. Huh, Tanya turned to look at her friend, surprised that the position Samu's mentioned seemed different from the position she recommended, and she didn't react for a moment. Luo Guang also expressed his surprise. He had no idea about the official decision. He thought organization. Tanya, BZ, and others misunderstood Luo Guang's reaction, thinking that Luo Guang didn't know about it either. So Tanya asked, wait a minute, Samus, is there any misunderstanding here? Look at Luo Guang, he looks confused. Samus naturally saw the expression and reaction on Luo Guang's face, and thought that he had also checked his identity and appearance, so there should be no mistake, so he confirmed to Luo Guang, why are you so reacting? Don't you know this? Luo Guang shook his head quickly and said, no, it's just that I was a little surprised to say this at this time. I also plan to make you and others recognize my default identity through my subsequent training efforts. Naturally, Luo Guang would not say that he did not know what had been decided, because no matter whether he really knew what had been decided, as a vested interest, denying it would only make others feel that he was hypocritical. Hearing Luo Guang's words, Sams nodded in his heart, feeling that the other party was very good at life, so he praised, as expected of a member of the Special Forces, he understands that gaining trust and respect in the army depends not only on position, but also on his position and strength. This is not about Samu's helping Luo Guang lie. According to the information she received about Luo Guang was indeed from the Special Forces. To organization. The Special Forces that Luo Guang joined was also the Special Forces that the shooting club owner in Chicago had served in before. Because after being educated by the boss, some of Luo Guang's habits and actions were also colored by the Special Forces. Experts can also see that Luo Guang has the foundation of the Special Forces, and naturally he will give Luo Guang for the X organization. Light provides the best option when creating backgrounds. I'm going out for a run on Thursday, so I don't know if I can update it at noon that day. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 91. Chapter 89 Release. Without time to say goodbye to BZ and the other two, Luo Guang returned the M4S90 shotgun and left the training ground, following Tanya, who was looking at him curiously, to the single dormitory for senior officers. On the way, Tanya had to take Luo Guang to get his troop pass and some items, so she drove the jeep for a long detour. You actually kept it from me for so long. Tanya was dissatisfied with Luo Guang's concealment of her identity, which made her look like a fool for recommending Luo Guang as an instructor to Samus. Luo Guang sat in the co-pilot seat next to Tanya, looking at the scenery passing by the window. When he heard Tanya's words, he said with a smile, "I originally planned to climb up to the position of the Special Operations Force through selection, and I planned to tell everyone that I was selected for this position because of my ability, not my relationship." Really? Tanya hated people with connections. If she knew this before seeing Luo Guang's training performance, she would definitely scold Luo Guang regardless of her relationship with him. But after seeing Luo Guang's performance, Tanya would recognize Luo Guang's position as the captain of the Special Operations team in her heart. So Tanya was quite glad that Sams told her about the appointment after Luo Guang's training. Really? Otherwise, why would I have to live in the recruit dormitory and go through so much trouble to participate in various trainings? Who knows if you are targeting the female recruits in the recruit dormitory? I remember you specifically asked about the issue of male and female soldiers living together. Tanya's eyes shifted from the front to Luo Guang for a second and said, "I have a girlfriend," Luo Guang said. But Tanya disagreed and said, "Tisk, it's not your wife, and you have a wife. Isn't it common for you men to cheat? I think you won't see your girlfriend for a long time. Can you bear it for such a long time? Should be able to." Luo Guang felt that he was a person who rejected Wang Wei's beautiful body, and felt that his self-control was still very good. Should be able to? Isn't it necessary to be able to? Tanya heard a trace of unconfidence in Luo Guang's words. Luo Guang scratched his head and said, "Who makes me so charming that others always fall in love with me? Why are you so conceited?" Tanya looked at Luo Guang with contempt and said, "Anyway, I'll give you a shot first. Don't force female soldiers to serve you, otherwise I'll shoot you." "I understand," Luo Guang saluted Tanya, then thought of the online essays he saw before crossing, and said, "But what if I was framed? At the beginning, we were in love, but I was blackmailed afterwards, wouldn't I be miserable?" "Then you should take care of yourself," Tanya said. In her opinion, the probability of such a thing happening is very low. The two chatted while Luo Guang got the Red Claw's pass and identity card, as well as 2 sets of Red Claw's officer uniforms under Tanya's leadership. The background pattern of the pass is 3 Red Claw marks, with Luo Guang's own photo, position, and a string of exclusive numbers on it. The officer uniforms were red and black. They looked good, but they were not meant to be worn in combat. They were a bit restrictive, so Luo Guang didn't plan to wear them for the time being. After getting the pass, Tanya took Luo Guang on a jeep around the Red Claw base, introduced various places to Luo Guang, and then the two said goodbye downstairs in the officers' building. By the way, Tanya took a few steps, turned back and said to Luo Guang, "Starting tomorrow, teams from other NATO countries will arrive one after another. Tomorrow's scene will be more grand, so you can take advantage of that time to see if there are any who want to join your team, and remember to wear the Red Claw officer uniform." Tanya's last words were also a reminder to herself. After all, it was not the first time that Samus said that her clothes were problematic, but she just felt comfortable wearing them this way. "Thank you for the reminder." Luo Guang thanked Tanya for her kind reminder, and then said goodbye to Tanya. Tanya was going back to prepare for the next training arrangement, and Luo Guang planned to go back to find Bis and the others to say goodbye formally. There were several jeeps for officers at the entrance of the officers' dormitory, so Luo Guang borrowed one and came to the recruits' dormitory. As soon as he entered the door, he attracted the attention of everyone who was busy with their own things. Luo, BZ and others did not expect Luo Guang to come at this time. "New recruit Oli, do 10 push UPS for me first." Luo Guang directly provoked Oli as soon as he came in. "What?" Oli was easily provoked, but still did push UPS reluctantly. Luo Guang nodded, It seemed that Oli still obeyed the order, and said, "This is your punishment for bullying the weak this morning." Report. Oli's teammate stood up. "Go ahead," Luo Guang said casually. Seeing that Luo Guang did not seem to come to ask for an explanation, Oli's teammates also plucked up the courage to say, "But you are not weak, sir." Others also nodded in agreement. "Do you remember what Oli said at first?" Luo Guang said. "He originally wanted to choose me as the target of establishing his authority because I looked thin and weak." Sir, you misunderstood." When another teammate of Oli was about to explain that Oli challenged Luo Guang and Tanya because they walked in talking and laughing, Oli, who had just finished push ups, jumped up and said loudly, "I know I was wrong. Sir, I should focus on strengthening my own abilities and make myself a sharp sword to protect civilians and fight against biochemical crises." This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Luo Guang looked at Oli curiously and said, "It's good that you understand. But I'm just joking, you don't have to take it too seriously." Luo Guang thought that he had only asked Oli to do 10 push ups, and the other party should know that he was joking. Just thinking about this, he heard Oli speak again. "No, sir, I did something wrong. I will try to work harder in future training." Luo Guang nodded and turned his gaze to BZ, but BZ didn't want to pay attention to Luo Guang at this time. She was still sulking and didn't participate in the previous topic. After all, Luo Guang did not intend to conceal anything, so he came to BZ and the other two and repeated the explanation he had given to Tanya. "Alas." BZ sighed and said, "I'm not angry that you hid something from me." Luo Guang didn't believe the other party's nonsense, even though he had listened very carefully just now. BZ looked at Luo Guang and said, "I'm angry that I clearly held you back, but I'm still complacent." "Not really, after all, the vents on the ceiling can't normally fit an enemy with a gun." Luo Guang shook his head and said, "Excluding those unreasonable situations, I didn't actually save you many times. But there are still some, right? But we are a team, so you must help me, I help you, and we will overcome difficulties together." Although Luo Guang sighed because he couldn't act alone at that time, it didn't mean that he felt uncomfortable cooperating with others. BZ remembered that she seemed to have said something similar, but Fengzi and Ofer didn't reply, but looked at BZ. "Luo, your special operations team hasn't recruited anyone yet, right?" Orfeel turned to look at Luo Guang and suddenly asked. Luo Guang nodded. Hearing Luo Guang's words, BZ also understood the reason why Orfeel asked this, and hurriedly said, "In this case, I will work hard in the subsequent training and finally join your team." BZ set a goal for herself. She was strong and didn't want to be a burden to others. Fengzi and Orfeel also nodded. "Okay, then I'll wait for you to catch up." Luo Guang nodded with a smile. BZ and the other two finally smiled. After chatting for a while, Luo Guang said goodbye to everyone and prepared to go back to the officers' dormitory to rest. "Luo, wait a minute." Luo Guang, who was about to get on the car, turned around and saw BZ chasing out, and asked, "What's the matter?" "Luo Guang, are you available later?" "I have something to ask you," BZ asked. Luo Guang said, "It's convenient. I'm just about to go back to the officers' dormitory to rest." "Is it about today's training?" "I think the commander-in-chief has already commented well. A bystander can see more clearly than me where you have problems." "I know, but I want to hear your opinion. After all, you are close and may have noticed problems that the commander-in-chief didn't notice." Luo Guang reviewed today's training in his mind, shook his head, and said, "I recalled it, and it seems that there are no particularly big problems. I think it's more about the coordination between us. The 2 times Luo Guang saved Bis, there were more tricky enemies. Bis didn't react and was rescued. Compared with the other 2, Bis's combat quality is the best, and she is also full of physical strength. She didn't slow down during the whole training with the light machine gun. In order to solve our tacit understanding problem in advance, can I go to your dormitory to talk? Biss's words reminded Luo Guang of what he and Tanya said today. He quickly pressed the recording button on the X organization's mobile phone. Boys still have to protect themselves when they go out. Luo Guang noticed that something was wrong and asked one more question, but if the team cooperates, shouldn't Fengzi and Ofer be called as well? And I won't be training with you for a long time in the future. It won't be too late to train with you when you catch up. Biss was about the same height as Luo Guang, and was the tallest woman Luo Guang had ever seen. Biss put her arms on Luo Guang's shoulders, clasped Luo Guang's neck, and leaned close to him, saying, "Do you really not understand my hints, or are you pretending not to understand?" "I understand, but I have a girlfriend." Luo Guang said the same thing. Biss smelled the charming smell on Luo Guang's body and laughed. "Luo Guang, you are so hypocritical. In this case, why don't you push me away? I'm not rejecting you in a tactful way." Luo Guang didn't know why he didn't resist as much as he imagined. He thought to himself, could he really not control his desire to be bitter? Really, Biss played hard to get and left Luo Guang. But Luo Guang breathed a sigh of relief and lowered his head to think. Bizi saw that the other party's reaction was not what she expected, and she felt a little angry. Her invincible charm had hit a wall here. "I feel like my emotions and reason are two different people." Luo Guang analyzed his behavior and said, "Maybe I am just a hypocritical person." Bizi blinked her blue eyes and suddenly realized what Luo Guang said. "It's not that I still have great charm for Luo Guang, but Luo Guang's impulse or emotion is suppressed by reason," so Luo Guang said euphemistic words in order not to hurt his self-esteem, but his body was very honest and did not push me away. "Have you been suppressing it for too long?" Biss was very accurate in judging men, and pointed out the reason directly. The suppression here is not astringency. Luo Guang was not touched after hearing Biss's words. He recalled his life as a social animal before crossing and his experience after crossing, and said, "It should be, but I feel that I have not suppressed myself as much as before recently." This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Just like joking with Oli just now, Luo Guang would not do this kind of thing to someone he had just met for a short time before. Why not release it more? Try to follow the impulse deep in your heart. Biss liked the smell of Luo Guang's body very much, and stuck to him again, whispering in Luo Guang's ear. It was already late, and in order to catch up with the curfew, Luo Guang planned to drive Bizi back to the recruit dormitory, but none of the European and American jeeps were there, so Luo Guang could only borrow a jeep made in the Bear Country. He had driven European and American cars before, so Luo Guang was very cautious when he drove a jeep made in the Bear Country for the first time. He was afraid of losing face as a veteran driver. Before getting in the car, Luo Guang first walked around the car, carefully checking the powerful body lines of the jeep in front of him, and wiped the conspicuous headlights in front of the car and the equally conspicuous lights at the back of the car with both hands to ensure that he could see the road in front of him when he got on the road. The sky was a little gloomy, and it seemed that it was going to rain heavily. After a while, a few drops of water fell on the body of the jeep. As a driver, Luo Guang did not rush to get on the road. He carefully checked the body of the car one by one, and only took out his keys after confirming that he was familiar with and in control of the jeep. There was no one around, and it was the first time for Luo Guang to drive such a big jeep, so he first pressed the accelerator lightly to test the tightness of the jeep's throttle. It was a bit tight, so Luo Guang had to step on the accelerator a little harder on the strip. After turning the steering wheel, Luo Guang drove the jeep onto the main road of the Red Claw base. The rain began to get heavier, covering the entire body of the jeep. The slippery ground did not affect Luo Guang's driving feel. He sped along the road of the Red Claw base, holding the steering wheel tightly with both hands. With the continuous roar of the engine, Luo Guang led Bizi to the recruit dormitory. "Luo, I didn't expect you to be more surprising than you look, BZ said happily, and couldn't help but feel lucky that she didn't turn around and leave while Luo Guang was thinking. Luo Guang nodded. It was the first time to drive such a wild car, so Luo Guang didn't dare to be distracted at all, and he always held the initiative in his hands. Arriving at a long straight road, not far from the recruits' dormitory, Luo Guang stepped on the accelerator to the bottom and started the final sprint. The roar of the jeep under him made Luo Guang worry about disturbing the people around him. But BZ urged Luo Guang to speed up, and directly staged a speed and collision on the road. Since the other party had spoken, Luo Guang naturally chose to cooperate with the other party, and the two finally arrived at the end together before the curfew time. Luo Guang sent the soft BZ back to the recruits' dormitory, and then carried BZ to her bed under the astonished eyes of the male recruits. After completing all this without blushing or beating his heart, Luo Guang directly blocked the female recruits who teased him, and returned to the car in a flash, and returned to his officer's dormitory as if escaping. Then Luo Guang, who had just arrived at the door of his dormitory, was blocked by someone. I have to drive out tomorrow to do business across the district TT. The first day of February, I ask for a monthly ticket. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 92. Chapter 90. Goodbye Wang Wei. You're back, Luo Guang. The speaker looked at Luo Guang with a smile. How did you? Luo Guang was surprised how the other party suddenly appeared here, which confused Luo Guang, who had just learned European and American one-night culture. Wang Wei laughed and said, "Are you so nervous because you did something that you can't tell others?" Before Luo Guang could quibble, Wang Wei continued, "No wonder you held it in and didn't attack me that day. It turns out that's what your taste is now." Luo Guang noticed the vague murderous intent on the other side, and said quickly, "The reason why I held back that day was not because you were not charming enough. It was very difficult for me to hold back at that time." "Oh? Then I'm all ears to hear your reasons. Are you here? Why don't you come in first?" Luo Guang said respectfully. But Wang Wei said with a cold face, "Go to my room, your place hasn't been cleaned yet, it smells bad." Like a docile sheep, Luo Guang obediently followed the angry Wang Wei to Wang Wei's room. The other party's room, like Luo Guang's, was a single dormitory belonging to an officer. It seemed that it had not been tidied up and the suitcase had not been closed. Luo Guang could see the neatly stacked clothes there, mainly black in color. "Tell me." Wang Wei crossed her legs and sat on the bed. "That woman and I just had a one-night relationship." Luo Guang did not say BZ's name directly to avoid BZ's anger later. "Then why don't you have a one-night relationship with me? How am I inferior to her?" Wang Wei was really angry, and she blurted out her words without thinking. She thought that she had made such a big decision that time, but Luo Guang actually refused and was so angry. Wang Wei thought that Luo Guang rejected her righteously because of his current relationship, but she didn't expect that she, who came here in advance to meet Luo Guang, would see Luo Guang taking the woman back to the dormitory, and then supporting her, the scene of the other party leaving the dormitory. As for BZ, why doesn't Wang Wei think she is Luo Guang's girlfriend? That's because after finishing the matter, Luo Guang directly sent the other party away, who was unable to stand. If the other party was Luo Guang's girlfriend, then Luo Guang he would definitely not care about things like access control and just leave the other person in his dormitory. If she hadn't wanted to save some face for Luo Guang, Wang Wei would have been furious at that time. Of course, the time spent waiting for Luo Guang to come back also made Wang Wei accumulate even more anger. But in the final analysis, the fact that she is not Luo Guang's girlfriend or wife is the real reason why Wang Wei cannot accuse her. Some people may say that they can be criticized in terms of ethics, but you must know that this is a lighthouse country. Luo Guang has a girlfriend but is not married, and people in the military camp have more or less times when they need to solve physical problems with each other, which is considered strange. No more weird. You are different from her. Do you want to have sex with me for one night? Luo Guang said. Me, Wang Wei, who was stunned with anger, realized that her previous words were ambiguous and a bit shameless. Luo Guang knew that he was in the wrong, so he would not talk about it. Taking advantage of Wang Wei's temporary escape from his angry state, he struck while the iron was hot and said seriously, "For some reason, I don't remember what happened with you at all. I don't want to do that kind of thing with you in such a way, and I don't want you to sacrifice yourself for someone who doesn't remember you." To be honest, Luo Guang is also very worried about his relationship with Wang Wei. After all, Luo Guang has not lost his memory at all now, but has actually changed into a person with the same name. He can't tell Wang Wei about this. Under that special situation, Luo Guang couldn't attack Wang Wei even if he wanted to. But this should be the most exciting thing for you. As soon as Wang Wei heard Luo Guang talk about her amnesia, she immediately turned her attention away from Luo Guang and BZ and said quickly, "Wang Wei, with my status, I often encounter life and death difficulties, and I have also experienced several biochemical crises, but there is no sign of recovering my memory. To put it bluntly, I may never recover my memory, never. I can't remember the days I spent with you." Luo Guang really wanted to persuade the other person to give up and stop loving someone who doesn't love him unilaterally. He said, "Perhaps one day in the future, you will find and fall in love with another person who loves you equally, but if by that time you have already, you will regret it for the rest of your life if you give your first time to me." Wang Wei is a person with a relatively traditional view of chastity. She once said that she wanted to give the first time to her destiny, which was Luo Guang. But it was precisely because of this that Luo Guang said, "So that day, no matter what, I had no choice but to reject you." Wang Wei did not expect that Luo Guang had considered so many things at that time and thought so much about himself. He lowered his head and whispered, "Even if you have lost your memory, you are still the same as before. You are obviously a shy ghost and a big boring coquettish person, but you are always the same. It's about putting various restrictions on your own desires." After Luo Guang's interruption, Wang Wei found that she was not so angry anymore, and she didn't know if Luo Guang's mention of these things at this time was deliberate and improvised. When Luo Guang heard Wang Wei's words, he couldn't help but think of the peeping diary that he threw into the Raccoon City fire. Isn't it just his appearance and body shape that his personality is exactly the same as the Apocalypse Luo Guang? As Luo Guang was thinking this, he heard Wang Wei continue to say, "But, Luo Guang, you would never accept this kind of thing before. Sure enough, you are a little different after losing your memory. I refused at first, but I don't know why my body was unexpectedly honest, as if..." Luo Guang suddenly realized that the feelings that came out when chatting with BZ might not be bitter feelings, but some kind of instinct from the inside of the body. "As if what?" Wang Wei asked strangely. "Luo Guang, you do sometimes do this, but when you were in the training center before, you rejected all the women who came to your door. And the situation in the training center is not much different from that in the military camp, right?" Luo Guang shook his head and did not continue the previous topic. He suddenly thought of something and just needed to confirm it. "Don't want to say it, but does your girlfriend know that you do this?" Luo Guang didn't understand why Wang Wei mentioned his girlfriend at this time, and looked at Wang Wei. Wang Wei saw Luo Guang's performance and understood the answer. Looking at Luo Guang's expression, he said, "What do you think if I tell your girlfriend about this?" "Do you know who my girlfriend is?" Luo Guang's first reaction was to ask this question. Wang Wei nodded and said Jill's name. Without waiting for Luo Guang to ask, he told Luo Guang how he knew it. He said, "Just confirm the women you have contacted after the Raccoon City incident, and then filter them according to your preferences. After narrowing the scope, you will know. Is it true that falling in love will make a woman's temperament different? If she meets these conditions, she is the only one around you. No, Jill hasn't been with me for the past few months. Is it because of the sky? Before Luo Guang finished speaking, he was interrupted by Wang Wei and said, "At the Fenan airport, someone happened to see you hugging Jill Valentine, the former STARS, but he didn't know your true identity. The report also said that he thought you were an undercover. What do you want? Or what do you want?" Luo Guang told Jill everything about Wang Wei, so he was not very afraid that the other party would threaten him with business affairs, especially since Wang Wei was Jill's rival in love, so he would not be easily stirred up by Wang Wei's words. Wang Wei shook his head and said, "No big deal, and you don't look afraid of this being exposed. And I said before that we were originally in the same group. Even if I have lost my memory now." Luo Guang was strange, always feeling that he still had some special identity in the Apocalypse organization. Otherwise, even if Wang Wei had no ill will towards him, the Apocalypse organization could use this incident to threaten him to help them. "That's right, because Luo Guang, your existence is very important." When Wang Wei said this, his eyes felt a little ethereal, and his physical temperament also changed for a moment. When Luo Guang was about to say something, Wang Wei changed the subject first and said, "By the way, do you want to know why I'm here?" Luo Guang was a little confused, but the other party didn't seem to want Luo Guang to ask further, so he followed the other party's intention and asked, "Then why are you here?" "I'm still angry, so I won't tell you." After Luo Guang's words, Wang Wei was not so angry, but when he saw a woman coming out of Luo Guang's room, the possessiveness in his heart still made him feel angry, or it would be more appropriate to say jealous. Luo Guang didn't have much experience in coaxing girls. After hearing what Wang Wei said, he didn't know what to say. For a while, the two fell into silence. "Hey, don't you care about what happened after I left Europe? I just said I won't tell you why I'm here." Wang Wei knew that because they had been separated for a long time, the common topics accumulated during the journey from Chicago to Paris had been used up, so she took the initiative to find things that Luo Guang cared about as a topic. Luo Guang said to Wang Wei, "I'm interested, but you haven't checked whether there is surveillance in this room since you came back, right?" Luo Guang himself didn't intend to hide the matter between himself and BZ, otherwise he wouldn't have personally sent her back to the recruit dormitory, but he should be cautious about the matters of other organizations and undercover matters. "You don't have it in your room?" "No, I'm going to do that kind of thing. How can I not check it?" "But that doesn't mean you don't have it in your room, right?" Luo Guang certainly checked the room before doing that kind of thing. He didn't want a movie with himself as the male protagonist to appear on the internet. "I checked when I came here, and I only left the room when I stopped you just now." Although Wang Wei said this, he still honestly took out a new scanner to check the room again. The result was that no surveillance equipment was found. "Now you can worry about what task I will do after leaving you." After finishing his work, Wang Wei asked Luo Guang to ask him questions in an imperative tone. Seeing Wang Wei saying this with his hands on his waist, Luo Guang suddenly burst into laughter and laughed. "Hey, what do you mean by this?" Wang Wei blushed and said angrily. "No, I just thought you were pretty cute just now," Luo Guang said honestly. "Then do you want to know?" Wang Wei looked like he would not say anything if he continued to do this. "Yes." Luo Guang asked Wang Wei what task he would complete after leaving him. Wang Wei snorted, but once she saw Luo Guang's smile, she let him go and said directly, "I went to the Caucasus region to perform a mission." The Caucasus region, the name of this region seems to have appeared in the Resident Evil game, and it seems that there is the last stronghold of Umbrella Company there. What is the mission content? This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Surveying the terrain. Wang Wei was not informed of the purpose of surveying the terrain. She was just asked to conduct surveying operations in a certain area in the Caucasus. The reason why Wang Wei had to tell Luo Guang about this was to exchange information with Luo Guang and see if there were any clues. Luo Guang thought of something and confirmed to Wang Wei, "What is your mission here this time?" "Silent and lurking until the company calls." Wang Wei's mission was similar to Luo Guang's. Combined with the survey mission in the Caucasus, Luo Guang had a guess in his mind and said, the company's situation is not optimistic. It may be that it wants to go underground and wait for a new face and a comeback in the future. I also thought about this before coming here. Wang Wei nodded in agreement with Luo Guang's words, but what does this have to do with me going to the place where it was freezing that day to survey? Could it be that the company wants to move things? When Wang Wei said this, his eyes lit up. Yes, and there are not many people, and the social situation is not stable, so it is very suitable. Luo Guang said that he thought so too. But how will the company establish a base in that place? In order to ensure research, the scale will definitely not be small, and it will easily attract the attention of others. Wang Wei thought of the Paris Research Institute and said in unison with Luo Guang, underground. Did you survey the terrain and ask you to detect the rock formations? Luo Guang knew that the base in the game was established under an abandoned chemical plant, but Luo Guang had no intention of revealing this to Wang Wei at this time, or rather to Wang Wei. The Apocalypse organization behind her. Although the Apocalypse organization said that they were on the same side, Luo Guang did not believe that this mysterious organization would treat him well for no reason, and must have other motives. Yes, but my area is not very good, and it is difficult to carry out underground engineering construction. Umbrella Company basically sent out all the intelligence agents in Europe, but Wang Wei was not lucky. The area she was responsible for, no suitable place was found. That's a pity, Luo Guang said. Wang Wei said, but it's pretty good to guess Umbrella's intentions there. As expected, multiple people can discuss it together and develop new ideas. Thank you. Well, it should be a message from me thanking you. This is very important. Luo Guang found a reason for his words and continued, otherwise Umbrella Company is hiding. The world is so big and it would be too difficult without clues. Found it? As long as I can help you. By the way, Luo Guang, your goal now is to bring down the company. Luo Guang nodded. What happens next? I haven't thought about it yet. Maybe I can retire with Jill with the money. Wang Wei heard what Luo Guang said and said quickly, that won't work. Luo Guang, I think you can join us and try to see if you can restore your memory. When Wang Wei said this, there was a bit of expectation and worry about the future in her eyes. The expectation was because she could see Luo Guang often, and the worry was because she knew that her organization would not let Luo Guang retire so early. If Luo Guang really did this, Wang Wei could already imagine what the organization would do at any cost to force Luo Guang to come out. For example, arranging an accident for Luo Guang's lover and then blaming the blame on other organizations. Meow. I originally planned to publish this chapter on the same day as the previous chapter, but I really couldn't spare the time to type out the words today, so I had to publish them separately in order to keep updating. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 93. Chapter 91 Death Video. The next morning, Luo Guang remembered that Tanya mentioned that there would be an event today and that soldiers from various countries would come, so he had no choice but to get up early and change into the officer uniform of the Red Claws. Putting the M92F pistol with the silencer removed into the holster on his waist, Luo Guang packed the important information in the backpack with the ability of hardened armor and attached the tracking pheromones he made. After looking in the mirror and confirming that there was no problem with his appearance, Luo Guang left the officer's dormitory building and happened to meet Wang Wei, who was standing alone at the door of the building. Good morning, Luo Guang said to Wang Wei. Good morning, Wang Wei also replied, saying, I've been waiting for you for a long time. You see, the others have already gathered at the square. Teams from various countries arrived at the Red Claws base one after another since midnight. The sound of the planes was a bit noisy, but Luo Guang still slept soundly. Just knock on my door. Luo Guang was a little embarrassed when he saw that there was no one else around. Moreover, after the virus transformation, Luo Guang's necessary sleeping time was shortened a lot, so waking up early would not have much impact on Luo Guang. However, Luo Guang still likes the comfort of sleeping and can relax his mood, so Luo Guang will not force himself to use the extra time to study. Wang Wei threw the car keys to Luo Guang and said, "That will wake you up. But if you come out 10 minutes later, I will wake you up to prevent you from being late." "Thank you for your consideration." Luo Guang thanked the other party for his consideration and took the car keys to act as a driver. Driving to the main entrance square of the Red Claw base, Luo Guang saw military personnel holding different standard weapons after getting off the car. The Maple Leaf Country, Gaul Country, Prussia Country, Ying Country, Spain Country, Italy Country, and Lighthouse Country, a total of 7 countries' troops came, and judging from their dress and mental outlook, they are definitely not recruits selected temporarily. The most obvious thing is that the soldiers of Ying Country are not using the L-85A1 assault rifles that have been officially equipped and put into service in the army, but all AUG assault rifles, so Luo Guang guessed that these people might be from the special forces of Ying Country. Probably for safety reasons, the AUG rifles and the long guns in the hands of soldiers from other countries did not have magazines inserted. Those countries do not intend to rely on the Red Claws, which are forced to be funded by NATO Big Brother, to solve domestic biochemical problems. But according to public official records, only the troops of the Lighthouse Country have experience in dealing with the biochemical crisis in Raccoon City. So Luo Guang guessed that those NATO countries were so active in sending precious elites here, more to learn from others. "By the way, why are you here?" Luo Guang asked the topic of yesterday again. "Because the Gaul team is the team I lead." After a night, Wang Wei's anger subsided, and he answered Luo Guang. "By the way, Wang Wei did not come with the team, but arrived in advance on a special plane." "Surprised, but you are not." Luo Guang did not say the rest, but Wang Wei understood what Luo Guang meant. "They are actually all." Wang Wei finished speaking, and then added a Chinese lip shape of branch. "Heh, can this be done?" Luo Guang was surprised at the power of umbrella in Gaul at this time. Wang Wei nodded and whispered beside Luo Guang, "After all, the Raccoon City incident did not happen in his own country. Although there were videos leaked recently, those people did not really take it seriously. Besides, the upper echelons of Gaul had long been infiltrated." "I see, but the company's situation is not good now. Don't those senior executives have some little thoughts?" "Yes, but there is no need to expose themselves in such a small matter. The Apocalypse organization has sent people to actively contact those people. Because it has nothing to do with Luo Guang, Wang Wei did not mention this information." "I see, let's say goodbye here first. Can you hurry back to the team?" Wang Wei nodded to indicate that it was true. In order to wait for Luo Guang this morning, she pushed everything to her adjutant, and she didn't know how she would be lectured by the adjutant later. So Wang Wei hurriedly said goodbye to Luo Guang and went to the Gaul team. And Luo Guang found Tanya, who was commanding, and asked about his arrangements. Tanya looked at the idle Luo Guang and said unhappily, "Don't you see I'm busy? Find a place to stay." Okay. Luo Guang was driven away by Tanya. It seemed that Tanya had no tasks to give him, so he had to do it himself. Thinking that he had to select people to join his special operations team, Luo Guang directly examined the teams of various countries. Luo Guang first focused on the Gaul team where Wang Wei was. In addition to Wang Wei, there was another officer, who was also a woman. A team led by a woman is in line with the tradition of Gaul. Wang Wei secretly made a face to Luo Guang and stuck out his tongue, while the adjutant, who was half a body behind Wang Wei, looked at Luo Guang with resentment. Luo Guang quickly ran away to see other teams. Apart from that, the teams of the other 6 countries were all well behaved, nothing special, all consisting of 2 officers and 16 soldiers. After all, they were all soldiers who were quick and decisive, and soon everyone lined up and the whole square became orderly. The opening ceremony of the Red Claws officially began at the scheduled time. Samus walked to the platform at the front of the square, said a few words, and then directly released a video. This is Madrid TV. I'm reporter Angela Vidal, and the cameraman Pablo is filming. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. A young and beautiful radio host with golden hair and 2 braids appeared on the screen in the square. At this time, the host was holding a radio microphone and speaking. Looking at the surrounding environment, reporter Angela and cameraman Pablo should be sitting in the radio bus. Today, we are going to make a program about the daily life of firefighters, but the audience is lucky that the fire department received the alarm information, so we can see how the firefighters work up close today. Now, we are following them to the place where the report was made. After Angela finished speaking, cameraman Pablo moved the camera, crossed the front row, and put the fire truck with red and blue lights flashing in front into the picture. After a period of 10 times acceleration, Angela and Pablo got off the car and followed the firefighters in their fire suits to the place where the report was made. It was a tube-style apartment building. The one who called the police was a resident in the building. He found that his neighbor, an old woman, had locked herself in the room and was wailing all the time. Angela, who was standing at the door of the old woman's house, also vaguely heard the very strange wailing sound, and goosebumps appeared. In a flash, Angela, who was interviewing the resident who called the police, suddenly heard a loud noise behind her, which frightened Angela so much that she shrank her neck. Looking back, Angela found that it was the firefighters who pried the door open decisively. But with the loud noise of the prying door, Angela and others found that the wailing sound suddenly stopped. Angela swallowed her saliva and had a bad premonition in her heart, but she followed the firefighters with the cameraman Pablo and a fat policeman and walked into the old woman's house. After entering the door, there was a long corridor, which was very dark, with only the wall lamps on both sides emitting a faint light. Click, click. Footsteps suddenly sounded at the end of the corridor, and Angela found a hunched-over person in red and white pajamas. The flashlights in the firefighters' hands were very bright, so in order to avoid shining directly into the other person's eyes, they shone the light around the other person. But the other person did not respond, and the fat policeman also found that the person in pajamas seemed to be the old woman the caller said. After saying hello to the others, the fat policeman took the initiative to move forward to comfort the old woman. As a result, when the fat policeman's flashlight shone on the old woman's pajamas, the fat policeman suddenly found that the red on the pajamas seemed to be stained with blood, and his footsteps stopped. The old woman who was illuminated also reacted, and suddenly muttered incomprehensible words. The fat policeman, who was slightly startled, took a step back, but soon stabilized his mentality, approached the old woman's position, and asked about the other person's situation, but the old woman still seemed to be unclear and did not respond. Everyone else focused on the old woman's blood-stained pajamas, but Angela noticed the black spots on the old woman's face, the blood around her mouth, and her white eyes that had just been illuminated by the light. But the fat policeman didn't know this, and turned around without any convenience, pressing the intercom near his shoulder, ready to call an ambulance to rescue the old woman. However, before the fat policeman could say a few words, the old woman raised her half-lowered head, ran at the speed of a 16-year-old with her 60-year-old body, rushed straight to the fat policeman who had his back to her, opened her bloody mouth, and bit the fat policeman's neck directly. Then the clip played in the square was paused by Samus at this point. This is what happened in Spain yesterday. It was recorded by a TV cameraman. Sam said, looked at everyone, named the Spanish team, and said, since it is a Spanish matter, let the Spanish people express their feelings first. After Sam said, Tanya in the audience handed a microphone to the Spanish officer. Under normal circumstances, the policeman didn't need to turn around and contact for help, and when he called for an ambulance, he seemed to look at the camera intentionally or unintentionally. The officer mentioned the problem of the fat policeman, thinking that the policeman deliberately gave his head in order to appear on TV. Sams nodded, praised the other party for his careful observation, and asked the officer of Maple Leaf Country again. I think the old woman's movements don't look like an old woman in her 60s, and she's biting people like crazy, which looks a bit like the zombies in the Raccoon City video. Samus nodded again. She just wanted the people below to find the problem, so after asking 2 questions, Samus didn't ask questions or continue playing the video, but said, yes, it is very similar to the zombies in Raccoon City, but in essence, it is different from the virus infected by the zombies in Raccoon City. Someone raised his hand and asked, Commander, you just said that the virus is different, does that mean Red Claw has analyzed the virus in the old woman? Later, professionals went there and sent the bitten police and others to the medical room on the first floor of the apartment, and extracted their blood samples and took them to a professional research institute for testing. Another point worth noting is that all the bitten people have become zombies, so it is temporarily certain that the virus can be transmitted through saliva. Because only the Lighthouse Nation has samples of the T-virus, the blood sample was tested in a research institute in Spain that was jointly established by the Lighthouse Nation and Spain, and then the researchers discovered a new unknown virus. Samus played this video for everyone, not to issue tasks, and said, I show this to everyone to tell you something. This chapter is not over yet, please click the next page to continue reading. Since the Raccoon City incident, the biochemical crisis is not far away from you. If the Spanish government did not contact us immediately for safety reasons and seal off the building, if this virus spreads in the city, I think Raccoon City will be the last example of that city. I know that everyone here is the elite among the elites. Facing this kind of zombies, as long as you have weapons in your hands, you can easily solve it, but how to curb the spread of viruses and how to deal with emergencies that may be biochemical crises is the real purpose of your coming here to learn. Everyone's face was solemn, and they understood what Samus meant. It is easy to eliminate biochemical monsters, but controlling the spread of biochemical crises is the top priority of the Red Claws or the governments of various countries. I know that many of you have the mission of returning to your country to teach more people after completing the knowledge here, but it doesn't matter. This is in line with the purpose of our Red Claws. Samus knew that it was not enough to rely on the people here and the countries behind them to fight against the possible global biochemical crisis. But the Lighthouse Nation only invited NATO countries to come, which had its political considerations, and she could not influence the decision-making of the upper echelons, so she would not say much about the enemy of all mankind, just do what she can. The officers of those countries did not expect Samus to point this out directly, but it did not seem to be a bad thing, so their faces did not change. Instead, they were secretly happy in their hearts, thinking that this tuition might be worth paying. After Samus finished these words, he did not continue to talk about those great principles, but switched the video to real-time monitoring. On the screen, Bis and other Red Claw recruits stood in front of the training building, ready to go, waiting for Samus's order to start. Samus said, "This is a drill. It's mainly to show you what it's like in a multi-party situation, and to give you some idea of the upcoming training." Then Samus explained the training rules of the training building and the types of enemies inside, and said, "Everyone present is considered the elite of each country. Does anyone want to try it? It's a bit late, sorry meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 94. Chapter 92 Instinct. Hearing Samu's words and seeing the provocative look in the other party's eyes, the leading officers of each country took a step forward and said they wanted to try. Considering that the video played before took place in Spain, Samus took the lead in choosing the Spanish troops and asked Tanya to take the 4-member team they had selected. In order to let the troops of various countries have fun, Samus also rearranged the previous training building very considerately, cancelled the setting of the back door and the first floor shops, so Spain started from the first floor gate. However, the high-spirited Spanish troops only lasted 2 rooms before they were completely wiped out. The zombie hidden in the closet and the half-piece zombie sign lying on the ground each received a head income, and the remaining 2 were solved by the combination of bandits and zombies. The Spanish soldiers suffered a loss due to unfamiliarity, and they did not carry grenades or other throwing objects to cooperate with the house clearing, so they were not too frustrated. They returned to the square and watched the actions of the Maple Leaf Nation carefully. Because the things behind could not be shown, Samus chose the eager Maple Leaf Nation troops to follow the progress of Spain and continue to clear the training building. With the experience of watching the Spanish actions, the soldiers of the Maple Leaf Nation planned to take action step by step on the way to the training ground. The idea of the Maple Leaf Nation was good, but it was not successful. When passing the door that the Spanish had cleared, they were directly shot by the bandits inside, and 1 person was instantly reduced. The leader seemed a little angry when he saw this. He had already told his men not to underestimate this training building and to be vigilant at all times. However, the vanguard in the front was lax when he passed the room that the Spanish team had cleaned up in front of him. He did not check again, and the second position who trusted the former was shot out. These people are too careless, right? Didn't they find that after being cleaned up by the Spanish team closed the door when they left, but the door was open just now? Luo Guang thought so in his heart, and then he heard Samus start to speak. Various enemies, civilians, and various biochemical monsters mixed together will be the normal state of the biochemical crisis we will face in the future, so we will simulate the coexistence of various parties in this training building. In the usual training of the armies of various countries, the elites of various countries here basically think in a two-way mindset, and it is rare for such a cleaned place to have enemies again. In actual combat missions, with the support of intelligence, they generally only need to consider one enemy, and rarely encounter situations where multiple forces are present at the same time. Even if there are civilians, most of them are hiding or kidnapped by bandits, and their own intelligence departments have long determined the location of civilians, and they will not run out without any signs like the training building. The purpose of Sam's building this training building is to train soldiers' multi-directional thinking ability and various emergency response. This is a set of training methods she thought out after surviving Danforth City. While explaining, Sams said, "Of course, if you don't take civilians seriously, you can just use grenades and other things to blow down the building. If you can't control it, you can destroy the entire city at most." When Sam said this, in addition to Raccoon City, she also thought of Danforth City, and her tone was a little contempt for the high-level behavior of the Lighthouse country who took human lives lightly. Everyone didn't speak, and they understood what Sams meant by saying this. Although they are soldiers whose duty is to obey orders, this does not mean that they recognize or want to execute the order to directly destroy the city. Because as frontline fighters, they knew that those civilians were not just numbers in the mouths of politicians behind them. It took nearly half an hour for the Maple Leaf team to be defeated. Although they lost a member at the beginning, the subsequent step-by-step strategy worked well and successfully cleared the remaining rooms on the first floor. Unfortunately, the last member of the Maple Leaf team fell at the door of the first room on the second floor. At this time, the 2 teams of elite soldiers failed in the challenge, and Samus did not let the teams of other countries continue. After all, she was not trying to show off to the elite soldiers of various countries, but just to let the people present have a little understanding of the training difficulty of the newly established Red Claws, and not to underestimate their newly established troops. Samus said, "Now let's let the new recruits who have been training for more than a week come out. They are all temporary teams for less than a week, and their cooperation is far from yours, but they have been doing this kind of training recently, so you can see the effect of this training." While Samus was talking, Tanya brought the Maple Leaf people back from the training ground. The officer of Maple Leaf Country glared at the vanguard of the four-man team and told him to get back to the team. Tanya came to stand next to Luo Guang, giving Luo Guang the opportunity to ask Tanya a question, saying, "Is it my illusion? I feel that they are not as good as BZ and the others in the previous training." Luo Guang did not specify who it was, but Tanya understood what Luo Guang meant and said, "I think according to your standards, they all failed. So I am speaking based on BZ and the others' standards. The Spanish team is understandable, but the Maple Leaf Country team seems not so good." Tanya glanced at Maple Leaf Country and said, "When they set out for the training ground, they laughed at Spain and told me that they had made a perfect plan that could easily deal with the training ground I set up. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading." "Is this the reason why they use the turtle tactics?" Luo Guang finished. Tanya replied, "Those who can survive are good tactics, there is no such thing as turtles or not turtles. Don't think of the special forces as supermen who can do everything. It's not the same as before. No matter how strong a person is, he can't stop a bullet. Intelligence advantage and equipment weapon advantage are the source of their strength. So when they face an unfamiliar environment and only have a long gun and a short gun, it's already good to have such performance. But Luo Guang, aren't you also from the special forces? You should know this, right?" Luo Guang had checked the content of his resume compiled by the X organization last night, so he quickly replied, "Maybe the authorities are confused, and I retired after only doing one unequal mission." Tanya nodded, thinking about something and said, "With your ability, if you really deal with those enemies who have no intelligence support and are equipped with backward weapons, you must fight them all the way. So I think this gives you the illusion that the special forces are very strong. By the way, why did you retire so soon?" Luo Guang was also prepared for this question, and said, "It's because I'm too strong. I'm more of a lone wolf when performing tasks and training with others, so the captain thinks I'm not suitable for the special forces that value teamwork." Luo Guang didn't explain the matter more clearly, but made Tanya think that Luo Guang now cooperates with people weaker than himself because of that experience. "But you should have changed, right? The special forces shouldn't let talents like you leave so easily, right?" "I applied for retirement on impulse," Luo Guang sighed and said, "but I don't regret it." Seeing this, Tanya stopped asking Luo Guang about his past. At this time, on the big screen, BZ and the other three had already ensured the safety of the previous team's room, and then came to the second floor to start cleaning up the room that caused the Maple Leaf Nation to be eliminated. At this time, although BZ and the other two did not carry any throwing objects, they all changed their weapons, unlike when Luo Guang formed a team. BZ replaced the original M249 light machine gun, which weighed 7.5 kilograms when empty, with a 6.85 kilograms paratrooper model. Originally, BZ planned to change to a lighter short-barreled RPK light machine gun, but because the country served by the Red Claws was a NATO member country, there was no RPK weapon in the base, so she finally chose the Minimi 5.56mm light machine gun. Fengzhu replaced the MP5 submachine gun as a weapon, and Orfer also changed from the previous M40A2 sniper rifle to an SR-25 semi-automatic precision marksman rifle. Although they also did not use throwing objects, BIS and the others cleared the room faster, and it did not make people feel that they were moving at a snail's pace. The layout of the room was different in each training session, but BIS and the others, especially BIS who was in position 1, could automatically think of various possible enemy attack directions within a few seconds after seeing the layout. BIS's physical ability has become stronger, and her reaction speed has also become faster, Luo Guang thought to himself as he watched BIS's movements on the screen. Compared with yesterday, it felt very different. This was Luo Guang's first thought, and the second thought was that when Luo Guang and Jill continued to practice fighting skills in the non-southern country, he also noticed that Jill's physical ability had also become stronger, and it was still visible to the naked eye. But under Luo Guang's inquiry, when he and Jill parted, Jill did not have much time to exercise and was always running around. Jill also jokingly told him that Jill had become a lot stronger since she had done it with him. Originally, Luo Guang just thought it was a joke from Jill. After all, how could she have such an ability like the protagonist of a harem in anime? But now seeing that BZ, who had also had a relationship with him, had also undergone such a change, Luo Guang couldn't help but start thinking. And soon he thought of a clue, that is, the G virus that mutated after the alpha parasite was forcibly implanted under the exposure of the T virus infected body's genes, and the behavior of William Birkin, who had been looking for a mother who could reproduce offspring, that is, Shirley Birkin, after being injected with the G virus. I have not been infected with the G virus, but the instinct of the virus to reproduce still exists. Could it be that the reproduction and survival instinct of the T virus in my body now has influenced me in a subtle way? Luo Guang handed this question to the system. It is the desire of the adapter to reproduce and expand its own group after evolution, and it is also the deep-rooted survival instinct of human beings. Survival instinct? Isn't it the instinct of reproduction? Luo Guang thought to himself and asked. Reproduction is also for the survival of the tribe. In the world today, within the known range, the adapter is the first human to evolve to such a high level. In other words, at this time, the adapter alone is the entire tribe, so it will have a strong desire to reproduce. So in order to expand my tribe, my body did not refuse at that time. It even emitted a pheromone with aphrodisiac effects at that time. Luo Guang thought of BZ's mention of a very strange scent on her body when she was in bed, and asked if she had applied perfume when she went to see her. Yes. Luo Guang was a little speechless and asked, why didn't you tell me about the changes in my body? Natural reproduction is also a way of biological evolution. The adapters allow more humans to evolve through reproduction, which is in line with the purpose of the system, and this behavior will not cause any negative impact or harm to the adapters, so it will not trigger the warning of the system. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. This is the first time that Luo Guang felt that the system was a little dull. Didn't it feel the troubles he was having at that time? Can the system control or suppress this instinct? No, because the adapter has higher authority than the system, so the adapter can only pay attention on its own. But when Jill and I faced the tyrant's tentacle attack for the first time, didn't you help me avoid the fatal blow? Based on the first rule of the adapter system, the adapter's survival instinct has the highest authority. That time, the adapter's body instinct gave the system an unauthorized command, allowing the system to unauthorizedly control the adapter's body for emergency avoidance. But I didn't seem to notice the dangerous situation at that time. In fact, the adapter saw the dangerous situation in his peripheral vision, but he was thinking about firing back at the time, so he didn't notice it. I understand a little bit. That means that the body's instinct gave the system a command faster than his brain reacted. Let's go back to the previous matter. In other words, that kind of reproductive instinct can only be solved by me. Yes. I understand. After Luo Guang figured out what was happening to him invisibly, he asked another question, why did Jill and BZ become stronger? After the T virus injected into the other party by the adapter merges with the other party, it can enhance the physical ability of the other party, etc. You mean there is the T virus in my body, in my genetic fluid? But can't it only be used by me? The T virus injected into the other party is a half-incomplete version, which is stable and reliable. It will evolve into a version suitable for the host according to the host's situation, but because it is very stable, the improvement is limited and it can't be considered evolution. Will there be any bad effects if it is injected multiple times? Luo Guang was worried about Jill's situation. No, but it is speculated that there is a possibility of individual evolution. The system's answer made Luo Guang feel a little relieved. After chatting with the system, just as Luo Guang was rereading the adapter system regulations, An exclamation came from the Red Claw base square. Luo Guang looked up and saw that Bis had successfully cleared a room on the third floor by herself, but was immediately besieged after leaving. Because Fengzi and Ofer had already been defeated in the previous cleanup operation, Bis was left alone to face multiple enemies with guns and was instantly beaten into a honeycomb by paintballs. I updated last night, but it seems that some people didn't see it, so strange.